We'll call the meeting to order, please. Roll call.
Russo.
Here.
Carlson.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
Tallman. Here. Swigert.
Here.
Okay. Before we go to the first item, I have to read a statement. Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body created by the City of Iowa City according to state statutes. Board's purpose is to decide on applications for variances from the zoning ordinance, appeals of decisions of city officials, and applications for special exceptions requested under the zoning ordinance. Board of Adjustment is an independent volunteer board made up of Iowa City residents and is not part of the city administration. We're assisted in our work by the city attorney's office and by the planning staff. Prior to this meeting, board members received the materials submitted by the applicants, the staff reports reviewing the application, and any correspondence submitted by members of the public. Board members have not discussed the application or its merits with each other, staff, the applicant, or any other member of the public in advance of this meeting. All consideration and discussion by the board takes place in open meeting here tonight, where we will also have an opportunity to hear from the public. Board bases its decisions on facts and evidence allowed by city code presented in open meeting. Concise and truthful testimony helps us a great deal in our decision-making. We ask that if you wish to speak, that you come to the podium, print your name and address on the sign-in sheet, and speak clearly into the microphone so your testimony can be heard by all present and by our minute taker, as all testimony becomes part of the public record. We ask that the proceedings be orderly, and that when you are testifying, you address your remarks to the board. And if this hearing becomes lengthy, we may ask that testimony be focused on new facts or on information not already presented. The order of proceedings for each application will be an oral report by the staff summarizing the issues of the case and staff's recommendations, an opportunity for the applicant to speak, an opportunity for any other interested parties to speak for or against the application, and an opportunity for final statements and arguments by the applicant and staff. Board will discuss the issues and evidence, state its findings, and vote on the motion. Motions are always made in the affirmative. Now, those are the rules for the special exception. Later tonight, we have an appeal process, and there's a different set of rules for that, which I will go over before that item comes up on the agenda. So, up first tonight is special exception item EXC 25-0006, an application requesting a special exception to allow a drive-through in a community commercial CC2 zone for the property located at 1910 Lower Muscatine Road. And up first, we'll have staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Ann Russett with Neighborhood and Development Services. So let me get my presentation up here.
I'm going to interject and have the chair open the public hearing.
You want to open,
You
need to open the public hearing.
This public hearing is officially open.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. As was mentioned, this is a proposed special exception for a drive-through use for the property at 1910 Lower Muscatine Road. Here is an aerial of the property. It's on the corner of Mall Drive and Lower Muscatine. And here is the zoning map. The property is zoned CC2. The surrounding properties are also zoned CC2, with the exception of the properties across Mall Drive, which are zoned light industrial. In terms of background, again, this is a request to allow a drive-through facility associated with an alcohol and tobacco sales-oriented use. This site has had a drive-through for several years. In 2001, the BOA granted an expansion of a drive-through for a bank, which previously occupied the site. And a couple of years ago, the BOA approved a similar application requesting a special exception for a drive-through facility. That application expired because a building permit was never issued for the project, and so this proposal is coming back to the board tonight for approval of a special exception. The site currently has an existing 1,800 square foot building, and the owners were recently approved for an expansion of that building, a little over 1,000 square feet. You can see they're currently working on that addition here. These are just a couple of photographs of the subject property. Here's the photo from Mall Drive. So this is kind of like the northern end of the site here. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application. I just wanted to point out a few things on the site plan. They are proposing a pickup window at the far end of the building, closer to Mall Drive here. They are not proposing any type of order board or kiosk. The applicant has stated that these will be online orders that the people will order and pay for in advance and then come to the pickup window to pick up their purchase, and identification will be required at the time of pickup. They're showing a do not enter pavement signage at the far end and an exit only sign, and you can see that the cars here, they're showing several stacking spaces. The access to the drive-through use is through this private street, and then obviously they'd exit off of Mall Drive. They're also showing the screening between the northern property and the proposed drive-through. The role of the board tonight is to approve with conditions, or deny the application. And there are specific standards and general standards that apply to this request that I'll go through. In terms of specific standards, the first relate to access and circulation. The first standard is that wherever possible and practical, drive-through lanes shall be accessed from secondary streets. And in this case, the proposed drive-through will be accessible through that shared access drive on the south side of the property. It will not be directly off of Lower Muscatine Road, which is a primary street. The second criteria is to provide for safe pedestrian movement. The number and width of curb cuts serving the use should be limited. And with this application, they are not requesting any additional curb cuts. Third criteria is that adequate number of stacking spaces must be provided, and for this particular use, the minimum is 4. The proposed site plan shows 1 drive-through lane with 1 pickup window. The lane has existed since it was formerly a bank use, and the site also shows 6 stacking spaces in the drive-through lane, meeting the minimum requirements. Sufficient on-site signage and pavement markings shall be provided to indicate direction of vehicular travel, pedestrian crossings, stop signs, etc. The site plan indicates directional pavement markings in the drive-through lane. A pavement marking is also shown at the exit of the drive-through that reads "Do not enter." There's also an exit-only sign at the exit of the drive-through facility, and the site plan shows pedestrian paths between the existing building and the public sidewalk. In terms of location standards, the first is that the drive-through lanes and service windows must be located on a non-street facing facade. And with this proposal, the drive-through lane is located at the rear of the building and does not face a street. Second criteria is that the drive-through lanes must be set back at least 10 feet. And the proposed drive-through lane is shown that it's set back 10 feet from the adjacent lot, and it's also screened to the S2 screening standards. In terms of design standards, the first criteria is to promote compatibility with surrounding development. The number of drive-through lanes should be limited to not diminish the design quality of the streetscape or the safety of the pedestrian environment. Staff finds that the site plan proposes 1 drive-through lane that is designated for pickup. The drive-through lane will not impact the design quality of the streetscape because it's at the rear portion of the lot and it's adequately set back and screened from Lower Muscatine Road and Mall Drive by buildings and landscaping. Pedestrian routes will be permanently demarcated where they cross internal drives, and this would be internal drives for the parking area. Next is that drive-through lanes, bays, and stacking spaces shall be screened from views from street and adjacent properties to the S2 standards. There are additional screening requirements if it abuts a residential zone, but this property does not. So they're showing the required S2 screening. The third criteria is that multiple windows servicing a single stacking lane should be considered to reduce the amount of idling on the site. As I mentioned previously, the site plan shows a single drive-through lane with 1 pickup window, and the proposal does not include an order board or a kiosk. So there's no intercom system, and per the applicant, the drive-through will be for customers to pick up pre-ordered items that are placed on their website or a mobile app, and payment would be made in advance of pickup. Stacking spaces, driveways, and drive-through windows shall be located to minimize potential for vehicular and pedestrian conflicts and shall be integrated into the surrounding landscape and streetscape design. Staff finds that the drive-through lane is accessed through the shared access side street off of Lower Muscatine Avenue, where there's no sidewalk, reducing vehicle and pedestrian conflicts. The drive-through facility is clearly separated from the parking area, which is at the front of the building. And the drive-through is on the rear portion of the lot and is screened from Lower Muscatine Road by the building and landscaping, which helps integrate it into the landscape and streetscape design of the neighborhood. The fifth criteria is that lighting for the drive-through facility must comply with outdoor lighting standards, and staff will ensure that the proposed lighting meets the city standards to prevent light trespass and glare. The next criteria is that loudspeakers and intercom systems, if allowed, should be located and directed to minimize disturbance. And as I previously mentioned, there's no intercom system incorporated into this proposal. Moving on to the general standards, the first criteria is that the specific proposed exception will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, comfort, or general welfare. Staff finds that on-site vehicular circulation and access are adequate to accommodate anticipated users and drive-through traffic. And proposed signs and pavement markings will help efficiently direct traffic. And second, that properly paved and designated pedestrian walkways will also increase pedestrian awareness in the parking lot. The second criteria is that the specific proposed exception will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. 1910 Lower Muscatine Road, as I showed before, is Zone CC2, and most of the surrounding property is also Zone CC2. The addition of the drive-through is to be used for retail sales uses that are either permitted or provisionally allowed in the zone. The tobacco sales-oriented use is required to meet separation distance requirements, and these distances have been met per the city clerk's office. All exterior lights must meet zoning standards, and the proposed exception is not expected to affect the use, enjoyment, or values of surrounding properties. The third general criteria is the establishment of the drive-through will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property. Staff finds that the proposed addition of a drive-through for retail sales-oriented purposes aligns with the uses of other commercial facilities within the area. All land surrounding the subject property has already been developed, and the addition of a drive-through use will not impede any potential future improvements of adjacent properties. Fourth, adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and or necessary facilities have been or are being provided. And since this is an extension of an already existing building, utilities, drainage, and access roads are provided. A storm sewer is located in the northwest corner of the existing parking lot, and the site contains adequate space for vehicular circulation and parking to accommodate the use. The fifth criteria is that adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress. Staff finds that the entrance to the drive-through lane is on a privately owned side street with sufficient stacking spaces to avoid traffic congestion. It exits the property and leads to Mall Drive. Adequate signage is present directing traffic flow to and from the property with the do not enter signs and the exit arrows in each at the entrance and the exit. And there will be no sizable traffic impact to public streets with the addition of the drive-through lane. 6, except for the specific regulations and standards applicable, the project will meet the requirements of the zoning code. And the subject property meets the requirements of the base zone. The site plan will be required prior to installation of the drive-through facility, and staff recommends a condition that at the time of site plan approval, the site plan must comply with the site plan submitted with the special exception to incorporate the location of the pickup window, the pavement markings, and the signage for the drive-through facility. Lastly, the proposed exception will be consistent with the comprehensive plan. The IC 2030 Comprehensive Plan highlights the importance of recruiting new businesses to economically revitalize the city and provide services to its residents, with the goal to increase and diversify the property tax base. In the Southeast District Plan, Iowa City identifies the area's need to maintain and update existing buildings, landscaping, and other site elements to create a distinct identity. So staff recommends approval of EXC 25-0006 to allow a drive-through facility at 1910 Lower Muscatine Road, subject to one condition, that is substantial compliance with the site plan submitted with the special exception to ensure the location of the pickup window, pavement markings, and signage. And with that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for the staff?
I have one extraneous one, just for my own knowledge. The tobacco sales-oriented use is required to meet separation distance requirements. Do you happen to know what those are? I didn't realize that existed.
Yeah, it's a recent change to our zoning code, probably within the past year. And so they need to be, in order to get a tobacco license to sell tobacco products, you need to be 500 feet from another tobacco sales-oriented retail use and schools, I believe. And those are the two that I recall.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the staff? Okay, at this time I'd like have the applicant come forward. If there's anything you'd like to add, or be available for answering questions. And please make sure we all hear your name clearly.
Good afternoon, members of the Board of Adjustment. My name is Thomas McInerney. I am the architect for the project at 1910 Lower Muscatine Road. As the lead designer, I've prepared these site plans, approval criteria documents, and operational details for this special exception request to add a drive-through window to an existing convenience store. Well, it's a soon-to-be a convenience store. It's a former bank, but will be operated as the Crown Liquor and Smoke under the alcohol sales-oriented retail use classification. This property has a long history of serving the community. It originally developed in the early 1960s as Hawkeye State Bank with a multi-lane drive-through added around 1971. For over 50 years, this layout has safely accommodated vehicle access without significant issues. Our proposal repurposes this existing infrastructure by adding 1,075 square foot building addition over the area where the old bank had a couple of drive-through lanes, which allows us to reduce the drive-through to a single lane while minimizing paving and stacking space and enhancing landscaping and screening. The drive-through will function exclusively as a pickup window for pre-placed online orders via a mobile app or website. No menu boards, speakers, or on-site ordering will be allowed. Customers will confirm their orders at the window with staff performing in-person ID verification for any age-restricted items, ensuring compliance with state and local regulations. If they can't order, if they try to order through the window, then they'll be asked to go inside and order. So that's the difference. It's the ease of it. They just drive around and take a park in the lot. In addressing the specific approval criteria, our design prioritizes safe access and circulation, entry from the alley only, use of the existing curb cuts, 120 feet of stacking space to prevent backups, clear pavement markings for directional arrows and crosswalks. The location is on the non-street facing facade with a 10-foot setback and a S2 standard screening using native plants to minimize visual impacts. For compatibility, we've limited to just one window and one lane with recessed lighting coming from the soffit above to avoid glare and no intercom systems. This aligns with the site's legacy and surrounding commercial character. Regarding the general approval criteria, this project will not endanger public health or safety with no new utilities or drainage changes required. It won't impair neighboring property values or enjoyment, as the rear placement and added landscaping preserve the area's walkable vibe. Instead, it supports orderly development in the Sycamore Mall First Avenue commercial corridor, and it's consistent with the Iowa City's 2030 comprehensive plan goals for updating existing buildings and improving the Southeast District through efficient infill and sustainability measures. Beyond compliance, this drive-through brings real benefits to the Iowa City community. It enhances convenience for residents, especially those with mobility challenges, busy schedules, or preferences for contactless service, allowing quick pickups without entering the store. The design minimizes traffic congestion through alley access and reduced lane capacity, while added native landscaping improves aesthetics, stormwater management, and environmental quality, contributing to a greener, more vibrant neighborhood. In summary, this special exception honors the site's history while meeting all the criteria with a low-impact, community-focused approach. I respectfully request your approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Hold on. Any questions from the board?
For the applicant?
For the applicant, yeah.
Hi, Thomas. I do have a
Jill.
couple of questions. One, when I was looking at this plan, there's a space at the northwest corner that's curbed. There are call-outs for curbing, and I just wondered, is that a loading area? It doesn't seem to be part of.
Could we get the plan on this?
Yeah.
I could point to it. I got a laser.
Oops, wrong way.
So is it?
Sorry, I need to share my
The
screen.
way up in the northwest corner, just off the corner of the building, there's a,
Oh, northwest here. Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's this existing curb?
The legend says it's, is that an existing?
Oh, wait a minute. It's, oh, no, we're cutting it. So it'll be built. We needed to put the curbs in there because they didn't have curbs before. So the existing facility, it's such an old building, it didn't have curbs back then, that was in the 60s.
Right. Okay, so that'll just become one of the new parking spaces
Yes, and-
along the west side?
Well, originally they had the parking along the west and people would have to walk. So the plan that I believe MMS worked on this, they just flipped it over. We don't need that many parking spaces, so it worked out that we can accommodate the parking needs, with just lining them up along the other side of the parking lot.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, again, while I was looking at this plan, there are notes referencing removing existing pavement markings, pavement columns, and I was looking for those on the plan view. Are those just extra notes that,
What part?
notes 20 through 25?
Oh.
I was trying to line them up with the plan.
Oh,
and
there is now originally there was a mini foyer in front, and then it had a built out version that was built 2011, and that then it had two columns, and that we're just removing and making it flat. So it doesn't become a tripping hazard. In other words, it's reverting to its original configuration pre 2011.
Okay, that's all I had.
Any other questions?
So are you planning on most of your business being drive-through?
Well, it's a convenience, and it is a trend that's happening throughout. The drive-through business seems to be, they don't want, I have another client in Coralville, they'd rather not have any ordering board or because it takes extra staff. All you do is you show up and then they say, oh, it's your number. And they give you your order. They already paid. So that's the convenience of having these online apps now. And people just want to zoom and go. And it's much, and they just line them up, the orders. So when they come, they're ready for them.
How much foot traffic do you think you will have, or people actually coming in the store? Is that going to be 50% of the business, or will
It's along Muscatine, Lower Muscatine there. Foot traffic is it's not like downtown. So realistically, most people drive to this location.
Paula?
No, I have no questions.
All right. Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Anybody else in the audience who would like to speak for the application? If not, is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak against the application? Please sign in and identify yourself.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, my name is Dennis Kronk. I live at 50 Rita Lynn Court in Iowa City. I am one of the owners of the adjacent property at 1580 Mall Drive, and one of 6 partners, and I've worked in this building for 25 years, and I've been asked to present our concerns about the drive-through here. First of all, would say we're very pleased that after staring at this eyesore for several years that finally something is being done here. But I do have some concerns about some information in the application and the staff report. So I'm kind of flipping through it here, and I'll kind of read some of the stuff I've seen and my response to it. So the first thing is, and it says here, the intent of the ordinance is to permit full use and enjoyment of the property in a manner that does not intrude upon the adjacent property. We regularly have cars driving through our parking lot to get through the dry cleaners, which is immediately to the south. And there's absolutely no question the drive-through here at this building next door is going to lead to additional traffic through our parking lot, which will impact the safety of our staff and our clients coming through the property. So I would disagree that it doesn't impact our enjoyment of our property or the safety of our clientele. There's a comment here about including street capacity in the evaluation. This property is going to be accessed from a private alley, which is not really designed to accommodate significant traffic. I requested information about how many vehicles we anticipate utilizing this drive-through. That information is not available according to staff. And so I think it's impossible to understand how much this will impact or how adequate the access is to this property, and how can we know if it's going to impact if the access from the private alley is adequate when we don't know how many cars there's going to be. This may be a lack of understanding on my part. The findings indicate the site plan, the proposed drive-through is set back 10 feet from our property line. There's certainly room for a 10-foot drive that can be set back from our property line. The current drive that exists is about 17 feet wide, and it's at 3 feet from our property line. I inquired about whether they would be required to remove a portion of that 17-foot wide drive. I was told they would not. So the drive is not set back 10 feet from our property line. It's about 3 feet from our property line. So I don't know how that is calculated to meet those requirements, but you could see in the photos that they showed up there, it's clearly not a 17-foot distance between our property line and the paved drive that goes by the building. As far as the screening, the ordinance, it says here, drive-through lanes, bays, and stacking spaces will be screened from views from the street and adjacent properties. If you look at the site plan, the stacking extends 2 vehicles beyond where the screening is proposed on that site plan. So clearly that screening is not complying with screening all the stacking spaces on the property. I would urge you not to consider in your decision this claim that all orders will be ordered. First of all, let me say, I hope this is accurate, because I was pleased to read that they won't be pulling up to the window and ordering. But when I asked about that with staff, they told me that was absolutely unenforceable, and so that people could pull up to the window and order, which would lead to longer wait times and potentially greater stacking. I'm sorry. So if there's not some enforcement mechanism where they are absolutely not permitted to sell items at the window, I would encourage you not to consider that in your evaluation of this application. The findings indicate the drive-through is accessed through a shared access side street off of Lower Muscatine Road where there is no sidewalk. And that's absolutely true. There is no sidewalk, but there is definitely pedestrian traffic in that area. So I disagree that there's a compatibility or not a compatibility issue with pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic in this area. The site plan or the findings also indicate the facility is clearly separated from parking areas. I park my vehicle right next to where that drive-through is every single day. So it's separated from the parking on their site because it's on the other side of the building, but my building is 5 or 7 feet from where this drive-through is. So it's not really clearly separated from parking in the area. I think I may have mentioned this before. The public health and safety of our staff and clients, I think, is an issue, and I disagree that the access and circulation, if we can know that it's going to be adequate when we don't know how many vehicles are coming through here. And again, the proposed exception will affect the use and enjoyment of our property. The last thing I would say is, if you do approve this special exception, we would request that there be some requirements for the property owner to do something to install signage or something to discourage traffic coming through our property, because I assure you that's what's going to happen when or if this is approved. That's all I have. Any questions for me?
Mr. McInerney, before the rest of the board asks you questions, would you identify your business? Because I got to visualize it.
Sure. Yeah. My name's Dennis Kronk. There are 3 offices. There are 3 offices in the building. I am the owner of Cook Appraisal,
Okay.
which is our offices in the basement. There are 2 Ameriprise financial offices on the upper level of our building. One other thing I forgot to mention, I'm not here acting as an appraiser. I'm here acting as a property owner. But there's several comments that have been made that this won't affect the value of surrounding properties. And I can say pretty definitively there's nobody on staff that is qualified to make a determination about whether or not this will impact property values. I'm an expert in property valuation, and nobody at the city has those credentials, so I don't appreciate that those comments are included in the findings.
All right, thank you. And I apologize for
Oh,
missing your name.
no apologies.
Any questions from the board?
So what are your hours of business for the businesses in your building?
Sure, we don't have set hours. I'm usually there there's usually somebody in the building from 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. daily, and frequently, irregularly on the weekend. I mean, I'm in there almost every Saturday unless there's a home football game. But excuse me.
Do you also have clients who come to your buildings?
Certainly. My business has very few clients that come to the building. The two Ameriprise offices, which I want to say is somewhere between 10 and 15 financial advisors, regularly have clients coming to the building for meetings.
And how do your clients gain access to your parking then? Do they come off of Mall Drive or?
I would say primarily they come off of Mall Drive. Most of the staff is parking at the back of the building. There's really a one-way drive on the west side of our building. We have angled parking that's right up against this drive-through. So it's from Mall Drive, it's really a one-way back to the private alley at the back of the building.
So they enter on Mall Drive and then they would exit through the private alley behind your building?
There's a parking lot in front of the building,
Yeah.
and so those people would come in, park in front of the building. They can exit either through Mall Drive or through the private alley. I park at the back of the building, so I generally enter on Mall Drive, park in the back of the building, and exit through the alley.
Mr. Kronk, you said that I'm looking at this plan and it doesn't show details of your property, of course. But as I look at this plan and I see where the trees are planted on your property, is that a grassed area? You said you park up right next to the drive-through lane. Is there pavement right up against the east?
There's an aerial photograph, if she could bring that up. So
Right. Okay, thank you. I see it now. That's the angled parking. Okay.
So I park right in what would be the southwest corner of our lot, but you can see that angled parking, which is further north of where I generally park. That's about 3 feet from that paved driveway right there.
Right. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Any other questions from the board? How long have you been in your business in that location?
About 25 years.
Okay, so you were there when the bank was operating.
I was.
Okay. Was there a problem with the drive-through at that time with the bank?
There has always been traffic through our lot. It's been 6 or 7 years since the bank has been operating. We've never had an accident, thankfully, but always has been traffic through our lot. More so from the I would say from the dry cleaners, but my office is in the basement, so I don't have windows looking out there. But I can tell you, my partners who are all on the main floor are concerned about further additional traffic coming through our lot.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And how is it coming through your lot?
Pardon me?
And from what point is it coming through your lot?
So we get regular traffic off of Mall Drive that drives right along the west side of our building, through across the alley into the dry cleaners on the other side of the alley.
So they come from Ace Hardware down?
No, would you mind if I borrow your pointer? So the majority of traffic that comes through our lot comes in here, drives past our building all the way through here, and then into this dry cleaner space. And we're concerned about further traffic coming through and then accessing the drive-through at the liquor store.
I'm trying to visualize them going through your property to access the liquor store lane instead of just going directly into the liquor store lane.
Well, yeah, I can't explain it, why vehicles do what they do, but I can tell you a lot of cars come through right through here to get to here.
Right.
And so there's no reason I think it's more convenient to come through our lot than it is to go through their lot, come all the way around here and back up in here. This is a straight shot. Now, we would love it if cars came through here and went into the drive-through. We would love it if that was what they were doing here. We would love it if there was, now Dr. Mergen's not happy about this, and he wouldn't love it if there was more traffic over here. But this would be adequate as well. But what happens is people drive past this entrance right to our lot, and they come right through here, and they go into here. And now I can't say with certainty they're going to do that on our lot. I think it's pretty safe to say they will, because that's what's been going on for years.
Where's the entrance to the liquor store?
The drive-through entrance is right here.
Begins here and the exit out
this is
the
the
other side.
drive, and then you will exit out onto Mall Drive. So cars can come from here. Cars can come from here. Certainly, they will come through here. I suspect that you will get a small amount of traffic that will come through here and wind around. But this is where you enter the drive-through right here.
Okay. All right. That's what I was trying to visualize. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Crum?
Thank you
sir.
for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak against the application before we have the applicant come back up? Ms. McInerney, you have a response here?
Response?
Yeah, to those concerns.
Well, the concerns are interesting because the building's been there for 50 years in the same configuration. Their building was built 25 years after that drive-through was put in originally. And so my concern is that it seems that however their properties were approved for their parking lot, that's what they have. This is a legacy property. It's not being modified in any real significant fashion. It also should be pointed out that if you're not familiar with this area, you drive by there, you don't think about not going to the property and going. I mean, people that do this are no different from going like that. I mean, to me, either way, it seems unreasonable to believe that we're going to blame this guy. This guy's traffic is going to be blamed on this property now. And I just don't think that's actually reasonable, because this property, where do they have a direct access? This is not taking consideration that the property owner for this business, our business, owns half that drive there. So that's their property. So they're using their property to access technically, but it's not on the driver's side because they only have half of it. They use this side to come in. But but the point is that this property here is landlocked. So this is the problem. It's not this is the problem. It's this guy. This doesn't even have a drive that's off of a public way. So sorry. That's what my comment would be. And it just seems that this is an oddity of a property in general. So again, to remind everybody that this traffic can be accommodated through here, and enough possibilities of getting here in one direction. So that's how I kind of approach for it.
What about the issue of the drive-through setback?
The setback is 20 feet. Oops, sorry. It's 20 feet from the property line to the face of the building. That leaves 10 feet for the drive-through and another 10 feet for the buffer.
Okay, but is the drive-through lane 17 feet wide?
That's a big drive-through.
I mean,
No, it's meant to be, your drive-through is 10 feet. That's what we categorize for the Iowa City standards.
Okay, so that 10 feet difference between one property line and your drive-through, what is in that space right now? Is it open space? Is it concrete? Is it?
Well, there's a curb beginning at 3 feet approximately, and there's 7 feet of existing curb. Stormwater management, that's That's actually the benefit of having that extra amount of concrete allows people to go around if there's someone in front.
Okay.
So actually, that's an asset, I think, but then it has plenty of clearance by our standards to accommodate a drive-through plus 10 feet of clearance or setback is what the term is. So it's a setback term, and you have 10 feet. That 10 feet is 10 feet to the beginning of the 10-foot wide driveway. So it's 20 feet so the face of the building is 20 feet from the property line.
Okay. But cars could come as close as 3 feet to the adjacent property if they're passing anything like that.
Just like it's been for the last, many decades. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak for or against from the public? Okay. Okay, so we have to close the public hearing now.
Unless the board has questions for anybody else.
Any other board questions? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. For the staff, the area where their plantings are shown, I assume they'll have to break out a certain amount of pavement to create a planting area, if that's,
Yeah, it's 3 feet now. I was actually trying to find if it needed to be increased, and I couldn't find anything in the code that required more than 3 feet for the screening.
so the minimum buffer isn't required to necessarily be green space?
No, the setback is 20 feet, but that doesn't mean it has to be grass.
I'm sorry, I mean the buffer between the driveway and the adjacent property.
That has to be screened, so it could not be paved.
Right.
There's the actual portion of the drive-through lane, the 10-foot drive-through lane is 10 feet. And then there's some additional area that's paved, that will remain paved, and then there's the S2 screening.
One of the things that Mr. Cronk mentioned was that sense of inadequate screening.
Yeah. And we will look at that through the site plan process. The approval of the drive-through doesn't approve the site plan.
Okay, so that additional screening can be.
If there is additional plantings required, we will review that at the site plan stage.
Okay, great, thank you.
So what are the hours going to be of this particular lot?
I don't know.
Because the question is, if it's open later and not earlier, it might not have as much of an effect on the other neighbors. It would depend on their hours of operation and the hours that the other businesses are in operation.
So we don't know what the hours of operation
No,
are?
that was not a consideration in our review. If there's overlapping hours or not overlapping hours, our findings are the same.
Okay. Please sign in and identify yourself, please.
I'm the partner for this property.
I'm sorry, say it again, please.
I'm the partner of this property.
Okay.
I'm the partner of this property.
Okay, and your name?
My name is Simran Singh,
Okay.
and the hours are gonna be 8 to 12.
Midnight.
Yeah,
Okay.
8 in the morning?
yeah, 8 in the morning, and nighttime it's gonna be 12.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Julie? No? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Need to have a motion on the item to continue discussion, please.
I move the approval of E EXC 250006, an application requesting a special exception to allow a drive-through in a community commercial zone for the property located at 1910 Lower Muscatine Road.
Subject to.
Subject to, at the time of site plan approval, substantive compliance with the site plan submitted with the special exception to ensure the location of the pickup window, pavement markings, and additional signage for the drive-through facility.
Second?
I
Second.
second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Board discussion, please.
I admit I'm a little concerned about the screening along the east side. I don't know about the viability of such a narrow space and really getting plants to thrive in there. And it strikes me, if the applicant already has to remove pavement to create a 3-foot wide planting area, then why not remove up to 10 feet to create a landscaped
I think
buffer?
the issue was that the 17 feet would still allow room to pass.
But if you pass, wouldn't that be part of the drive then? And then the drive wouldn't necessarily be separated 10 feet from the adjacent property? A passing lane is part of the driveway.
Right. But if you only allow 10 feet of a lane, you're not really allowing the ability to pass.
Why do you need to?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a one-way drive.
Okay, I'm talking about somebody who wants to go around somebody who's in line. So if that's a trade-off you're willing to make. Okay,
Or it's a question.
question, okay. So the board can mandate that it be restricted to a 10-foot lane, or cannot?
Or I think it would be to increase the size of the screening area.
Okay.
If this were a different business, would the issues that the gentleman in the back presented be any different? I mean, that's.
It's any business using the drive-through is what you're saying, any business using the drive is going to have the same issues. It's not this particular type of business, it's the drive-through regardless. Okay. And I believe they would, yeah. It's going to be the same issue.
Given the nature of the business, with the ordering ahead and just stopping by and giving a number, it seems to me like this is as opposed to a fast food with the menu board and all that stuff, it seems to me that this is more efficient and would move traffic more efficiently for those using that pickup option.
Okay. Well, I agree with that, but the issue before us now is whether or not we want to require more screening area. Is there any?
And when you say more screening, are you talking strictly about width? Or are you talking about a difference from S2 to S3? What are you exactly talking about? Increase the screening area.
I thought we were talking about width, but
Yeah, I'm not talking about any difference to the
level.
vegetation or to the level of the vegetation, but simply I think that the neighbor brings up a good point about separation, and it looks like it might be possible to increase that buffer as a visual means of separating the drive from adjacent properties.
But I personally think it would, if it can be done without restricting the movement of vehicles that need to get out of the stacking lane and move on out, if that can be done, that would be okay with me, but would not like to see the ability to get out of stacking lane and leave off the table.
okay, but the applicant has talked about the change in the operation being a much quicker pickup than we had talked about before. So the likelihood of a stack up of cars is diminished by this new procedure. Is that y'all's understanding as well? Okay.
And also, I noted from the last time that this came through to us, they moved the pickup window. On the previous rendition of this, it was further back, and our concern was stacking up into the shared drive alley space. So it has increased the stacking space with the movement of the window to the far end. But I can see how people would, maybe they get in line to pick up their order and they're like, oh, I don't have my wallet. Or my kid's on the phone and I can't wait, I gotta go. There are reasons why people need to get out of, even if it's efficient, they need to leave the stacking space. And so I want them to be able to do that.
I'm wondering if increasing the shrubbery between the two lots would help. My concern is the fact that they drive through the lot of the property to next door to get to the private alley to use the drive-through for this particular business. I mean, I realize that this is something that's been going on for a long time, but if there is something that would help keep that down to a minimum, I don't know. I know what it's like to have cut-through traffic. And I don't know if putting more screening in and if that would help divide the two properties so that it wouldn't, not as many people would think about cutting through the property to the east to get to the drive-through. This is a new thing that I had not thought of until tonight, until you brought it up. Thank you.
Okay, I'm still going to focus on the choices we have in front of us,
Yeah.
which is one, to require additional screening, which might impede the ability of cars to move around. We know that the screening is a constant problem, constant issue. So we're trying to anticipate, well, how big of a problem would it be if you reduce the width of the lane? And how often is that going to be a problem versus the constant problem of the screening issue? My inclination is to say the screening issue is a constant, and the workaround issue is unpredictable, irregular, and I can't factor it into favoring that over the additional screening.
It took me a minute to follow that.
Oh, hell, it took me a
But I
minute to
got there.
figure it out.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Sure, come back up at
No, the
Oh, I'm
public
sorry.
hearing is
The
closed.
screening is, the public hearing is closed.
Well, just a statement of fact was not provided. There is no curb removed.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
I want to discourage the rest of you. Public hearing's closed. Okay. So what is the consensus of the board here? I mean, we really have expand the screening area or let the current proposal stay as proposed?
And does expanding the screening area reduce the ability to get out of the stacking lane?
It might. If you expand the screening area from 3 to 5 feet, for example, that leaves you 15 feet.
10 feet for the lane and 5 feet to squeeze through?
There's a total of 20 feet there now.
He's saying expand it, how many feet?
If you expand the screening from 3 to 5 feet, that leaves you 15 feet of a lane.
Got 10, regulation
Yeah,
is
and
10 for
then
the
5.
drive-through and 5 feet to squeeze by another car?
Once again, is that going to be a major issue to offset what we recognize as a legitimate concern about the screening?
Well, I'll just say I can't support that. You have to be able to get out of line safely if you need to.
Anybody on the board want to make a motion that we require, make one of the conditions of the approval, the expansion of the screening area from 3 to 5 feet or more?
My concern is that we have a 10-foot setback required between a drive and the adjacent property, and that when part of that is uninterrupted pavement in a throughway, even a one-way, that we're not being true to that intent, that you're counting existing paved area that can be utilized by a vehicle within what's required just administratively as a border from neighboring properties. That's my concern.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out whether we want to proceed with a formal motion to amend the recommendation or not.
What's
Well, it would require somebody to make a motion that we add a stipulation on the approval. I forgot what, I'm looking at the language.
Well, I'll go ahead since I brought it up. I'm going to make a motion that we amend the approval of this to include a landscaped 10-foot buffer in accordance with the ST student standards, what's required by staff, but that the entire 10-foot setback be
Okay.
landscaped,
10 foot.
curbed. I mean, some of that 10-foot would be, that's the standard. It's a 10-foot setback from adjacent property. So leaving us with a 10-foot drive and then a curbed planted area for the remaining, and not additional necessarily shrubs or native plants and stuff, but just a visibly landscaped border.
Okay. We need a second.
Is there a second?
Second for that, and also is any alternative plan, whether you want 10 feet or 5 feet or whatever, or it's 10 feet what we want to settle on. We need a second to Julie's motion if that's where we want to go.
Well, if we do 5 feet, then what are we going to do with the other 5 feet?
We're going to leave it paved.
you what?
Leave it paved.
Just want to. So Julie's made a motion. We got a second.
I won't second it.
Motion dies for lack of a second.
I move that we have the screening, instead of 3 feet, we have it 5 feet.
Second to that.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Okay. So, do we have to have a separate vote just on the amendment, or does that just become part of the motion and it's up or down based upon the amendment?
Let's, the motion's on it in a second, might as well vote now, and then we can incorporate it if it's approved as a second condition.
Okay.
So,
So, but do you have, first of all, I've got a motion that's seconded. I want to make sure that there's at least a majority on.
right,
the-
yes.
The board who approves the motion. So I hear 3 people approving the motion and second. Okay, let's proceed to add that to the formal vote and then vote. Okay. Does Julie need to restate the overall motion, or?
Well, the motion is just with the one condition, so you'll need to amend your motion to approve to include the second, well, both conditions.
Whoever made the motion to amend needs to incorporate it into the larger motion, right?
That was Nancy.
That was Nancy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Nancy, that's you.
So so what do I have to read now?
Well,
The whole thing, all of it, including both of them?
Yes.
you have a second.
Yeah. So I reread the whole thing and put the second one in. Okay. I recommend approval of EXC 25-0006 to allow for the establishment of a drive-through facility in a community commercial zone for the property located at 1910 Lower Muscatine Road, subject to the following conditions. 1, at the time of site plan approval, substantial compliance with the site plan submitted with a special exception to ensure the location of the pickup window, pavement markings, and additional signage for drive-through. 2, that the screening take up 5 feet of the property on the east side of the lot.
Where the S2 screening is required.
S2 screening, okay, that S2 screening will be provided on the east side of the lot for a distance of 5 feet.
I would say between the drive-through lane and the neighboring property.
Okay, between the drive-through and the neighboring property. Does everybody understand?
Okay. Your second?
I second.
No other discussion? Call for a vote.
Swigert,
No.
Tallman,
Yes.
Baker,
No.
Carlson,
Yes.
Russo.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2. It's approved, so any person desiring to appeal this decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after this decision is filed with the city clerk's office. Thank you very much to everybody. Okay. I'm looking for my agenda. Next up on the agenda is appeal item APL 25-0001, an appeal submitted by Prestige Properties to overturn a decision of the building official to approve a minor modification, MOD 25-0005, to decrease the minimum required parking by 50% from 8 to 4 spaces for proposed eating establishment for the property at 305 North Gilbert. Now, with that being said, I also need to introduce the rules of this discussion. This is what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to have an introduction by the Secretary of the Board setting forth the administrative decision on appeal and appellant's grounds for the appeal. Then an opportunity for the appellant to speak, an opportunity for the staff to speak, an opportunity for proponents and opponents of the appeal to speak, an opportunity for rebuttal by proponents, and then by opponents. The board will discuss the issues and evidence, state its findings, and vote on the motion. Motions are always made in the affirmative. And I will open up the public hearing on this issue.
Okay, thank you, Chair. As you mentioned, this is an appeal. I'm just going to introduce this real quickly. This is an appeal regarding a decision that the building official made for a minor modification for a reduction in parking for the property at 305 North Gilbert Street. Here is an aerial of the property, which is located at the corner of East Bloomington Street and North Gilbert Street. Here's the zoning map. It's zoned CB2, and the surrounding properties are commercial properties. In terms of background, the building official approved a minor modification for a proposed new eating establishment in this location. Minor modifications are a way that, a mechanism by which specific regulations may be modified, provided certain criteria are met. They are reviewed by the building official. Minor modifications must meet several approval criteria, that special circumstances apply to the property, that the modification would not be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare, that it would not exceed the minor modification standards or allow a use or activity not otherwise allowed. Minor modifications requested is in conformity with the intent and purpose of the regulation, and that the requested minor mod complies with all other applicable ordinances. This specific request was one that was reviewed by the building official in consultation with the Director of Neighborhood and Development Services, that allows staff to reduce the total number of parking spaces required by up to 50%. These are the standards that were reviewed. There's requirements on the zoning, which needs to be, it's only allowed in certain zones. The building must be limited to 5,000 square feet or less. Evidence is provided that the parking proposed is sufficient. And then there's a fourth criteria related to historic properties. The zoning code allows appeals where it is alleged that there is an error in a decision made by the city manager or designee by any person aggrieved by such a decision. Those people may appeal. And then for this, I'm going to turn it over to Sue.
Just real briefly, so the appeal procedure, again, is a little different than the special exception that was before you before. And so the important thing here is, obviously, the board's going to review everything that comes before you now. But that the board can affirm the decision, and if it finds an error was made, can reverse the decision or modify the order. So the question you'll have to consider in your deliberations after you've heard everything is, did the building official make an error?
Staff has received 5 pieces of correspondence related to this appeal. 2 of those were provided in your packet. 3 were provided via email, and they're before you tonight. 1 letter expressed concerns with the parking reduction. 5 pieces of correspondence supported the parking reduction. And this slide just goes over the order for appeals that the chair just went over. So the first group up after I conclude is the appellant. So I'll turn it back to the chair.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, we'll have the appellant talk to the board, please. Come up, sign in, please sure to clearly identify yourself.
Paxton Williams. I'm with the Bell & McCormick Law Firm, and we're representing Prestige Properties 5 in this appeal. Good evening. Thank you for your time and your service on the board. Now, as discussed, the applicant sought a modification for 305 North Gilbert to decrease the required minimum parking by 50% from 8 spaces to 4 spaces. And the applicant also proposes to use the existing structure at 305 North Gilbert as an eating establishment. And the site plan submitted also with the application shows that the building has 1,250 square feet, and the applicant is also proposing approximately 1,600 square feet in a patio seating area. Now, the decision that we're appealing states the subject property provided a parking demand analysis for review. And that's one of the requirements, that a parking demand analysis must be submitted. And the decision stated that this analysis was provided, and therefore the qualifying standards were met for consideration. Contrary to that standard, to that statement, no parking demand analysis was considered or conducted or provided by the applicant. our appeal references a parking demand analysis from Pacheco Koch Consulting Engineers, not because of who did it, but because it explains what a parking demand analysis is, including, for example, a parking demand analysis is an investigation of actual and or published parking demand characteristics for a specific site with specific land use. We also reference this because it indicates the form of what an analysis might take. The University of Iowa study that we referenced in our appeal for Waterloo also makes clear that both a study was conducted and one that included, for example, the use of mounted cameras to get more accurate utilizations. Here, there is no investigation of actual and or published parking demand characteristics for a specific site with specific land use that was provided by the subject property. And also to the city's statement that was provided in response to our appeal, we don't say that a professional engineer cannot conduct the analysis, but we're saying that just because a person is a professional engineer providing their opinions, that does not mean that an actual analysis isn't necessary. And that, to us, seems to be the city staff's argument. To be clear, our appeal is based on the real harm that we believe will be seen if this modification is upheld. The issue, though, today is that the applicant didn't provide information required to be even considered for a minor modification. A conclusory email is not a parking demand analysis, and letters of support saying we won't be affected are also not a parking demand analysis. For example, where's the basis for saying we won't be affected? And I might quibble with the statement of a few moments ago regarding the letters that objected to this modification that were submitted. Potentially, there could have been one submitted after the appeal, but in the record, it is clear there are at least 3 letters that call into question and raise issues for this minor modification. I'll mention, they're all in the record, but I'll briefly mention several of them now. For example, there's a letter from the owner of 302 East Bloomington, which is just 200 feet from the subject property, and they support this appeal. They contend that the reduced parking will cause customers to overcrowd the parking and on-site parking, the business and on-site parking, thus forcing customers' vehicles and delivery vehicles to purge onto street parking and also neighboring parking lots as owned and used by the neighboring properties. This letter, they mention how they find no compelling reason to support the approval of the reduced parking, as in the end, the neighbors will feel the ongoing brunt of the parking issue and their properties due to the recent approval of the reduced parking, so due to the modification. And how does that letter end? They ask for a parking study at a minimum, which should be required. There's also a letter from MRE Family Care Clinic located at 404 East Bloomington, and they provide several reasons for concern if the modification is upheld, as did a letter from Hawkeye Area Community Action at 300 East Bloomington. They also expressed their concern. Now, at minimum, we believe these letters should have put the city on notice that quantifiable data and unbiased support should have been sought. We believe that with respect to a number of the claims made by the applicant, we believe that they're without basis. For example, the claim that they would use 2 to 4 parking spots during the expected peak hours from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., there's nothing to support this claim regarding both the peak hours and the fact that they would claim to use 2 to 4 parking spots during this time. There's nothing to support that, there's nothing but a self-interested statement. We also believe the same with respect to the claim that the business expects foot traffic to be the main mode of transportation. They claim that they expect 10% to drive and park, 60% to walk, bike or scooter, or take a scooter at 15%, ride share 15%. Like if you look at all the numbers, again, there's no basis for this. There's no support for it. Again, it's just a self-interested statement. And the applicant indicates that insight was provided for their breakdown from two owners who they claim are similar or operators of similar establishments just a couple blocks away from the Pitt Mall. But if you look at a map, this site is not just a couple blocks away from the Pitt Mall. And so we believe all of this information should have put the city on notice that, if nothing else, a real parking demand analysis as required should have been sought. Now, we believe that to agree to this minor modification is tantamount to saying anything can be a parking demand analysis. No methodology is required. No facts that can be checked are required. All that would be required is a self-serving opinion. And that can't be what the ordinance means, and it can't be what citizens expect. Now, I'll note that the city's October 3rd memorandum related to this appeal, we believe makes clear that the city misunderstands the information that we provided in the appeal. Specifically, the memo states that the appellant wrongly uses the area of the patio, which is not regulated by the minimum parking requirements. The appellant did not wrongly use the area of the patio. We know how the ordinance is calculated, but we also state in the appeal that patrons who sit outside are just as likely to drive vehicles to the establishment as those sitting inside, and that the patio space undeniably generates the same parking demand as the floor area within the building, and that excluding it understates the true need for parking and circumvents the intent of Section 14(5)(a)(4). And as such, we stated that this parking space should be included in terms of the analysis and consideration to understand what actually should be needed and should be done. And further, and I'll quote the city's October 3rd memo, the city makes clear that city zoning codes set minimum parking requirements, and that those parking requirements are not a direct measurement of actual parking use, but rather a theoretical estimate of how much demand a typical site is expected to generate. So given that, it's clear that the space that would be outside seating that isn't used to calculate the minimum requirement per the terms of the ordinance does weigh into the actual amount of parking space that would be required. And so that's what we reference. And so again, I think that's all I have at this point. And I'll see if you have any questions, but I just want to say that there needs to be a parking demand analysis. And though we believe there are real issues in terms of whether or not a parking demand analysis would allow for such a modification, we believe that at this stage, it's not even appropriate to grant the minor modification because of the lack of a parking demand analysis.
All right, thank you. Stay right there. Any questions? Anybody got any questions? I have a question. Looking at section 14(9)(a)(1) of the definitions of parking on floor area, I want to get your interpretation of this code. I'm quoting here. However, floor area does not include the area of porches, balconies, and other appurtenances. It's a new word I never heard before. So really, what is your understanding of that particular section of the ordinance, which seems to say you cannot count a patio? In other words, is your understanding of the word appurtenances the same as the staff's?
Here's what I would say to that term. A porch, depending on the type of business, I mean, people might sit outside on a porch or people might sit outside, but here, the true purpose of that space is made clear. It's a patio seating area. And so what we're saying is, even if the ordinance doesn't require consideration of that in terms of coming up with the minimum parking space number, it clearly goes to the intent of this because you need to know how much use is going to be. I mean, so if I have a building of 1,000 square feet, but then if I have a patio that I'm going to use of 5,000 square feet that I'm going to use as a restaurant, you might want to know that I'm going to use 5,000 feet for the same purpose that I'm going to use as my indoor space. And so, whereas how the calculation of the minimum parking number comes into play, you can know and you can take into consideration the fact that I'm going to have 5 times as much space outside that I'm using for the same purpose as the actual square footage of the restaurant.
Okay. I guess my question is this. You could say that, but you could also, looking at that part of the code, say, well, it's very clear. We don't count that area as part of the floor area for the applicant, or for the developer. So is this simply a matter of subjective interpretation, or I'm looking for as close to objective reality here as it can get, because one side says, this clearly says we cannot use this as floor area, and you're saying that you clearly should use this as floor area.
I would use the language from the city in their October 3rd memo, where they say those requirements are not a direct measurement of actual parking use, but rather a theoretical estimate of how much demand a typical site is expected to generate. And so in terms of if you know that an entity might use 5 times as much space as they would use inside the building for the same purpose as the building, so I would say that's the difference between a porch or other kind of appurtenant space, right? So I would argue that the outdoor patio space is not the same as a porch.
Okay. But one of the definitions of appurtenance includes, I looked at the Cornell Law Library, includes the word patio as a legitimate appurtenance. So if we're going to call it a patio, it's exempt from the floor space requirement. That's what the code seems to be saying. And you're saying it's not taking into account the actual use of the space, which is part of the business.
I think it begs the question, when is a patio and when is a patio something else? Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, in that line, is a patio usable in Iowa 12 months of the year?
That's a great question, and so I'll answer it 2 ways. I would say generally probably not, but I do think probably like during the pandemic we saw, people had coverings over patios, people had warming units over patios, so I would imagine it's not going to have the same use in December potentially as it might have in June or July, but I think that's a question that I think a parking demand analysis might actually help us understand that, the type of use that might be seen different times of the year. And I think we would need more information from the applicant related to what that use might look like throughout the year.
Has Iowa law addressed the definition of a patio compared to connected structures? Is
Is there a definition, I mean, in our ordinance?
is there any case law to your knowledge that has refined the definition of outdoor structures? The difference between a porch and a patio, or any kind of a attached structure. A patio isn't really an attached structure unless they're planning on putting a roof on it that ties into the existing roof. But it's generating. It's on the same site and it's generating the same amount of business as the interior, except perhaps under weather conditions or seasonal conditions. So I just think there's got to be legal precedent for this definition somewhere.
Well, it's a city code, right? And the city code is defining floor area. It's the total area of all, and it'll be, they can put it up on the screen. The total area of all floors of a building or a portion of a building measured to the outside surface of the exterior walls or to the center line of the walls of an attached building. Floor area includes all spaces within the building, including the spaces in the basement and the cellar, if it's a principal or accessory use. However, floor area does not include the area of a porch, a balcony, or other appurtenances. So the question before the board is, I assume, is whether you consider the patio an appurtenant. I'm having more troubles in the chair with that word. But so patio is not in the floor area, but you've got to decide for yourselves if floor area does not include porch, balcony, and other appurtenances, and whether a patio is included as an appurtenance as opposed to the earlier part of that definition, which talks about the inside of the walls.
So a patio could have a roof, but as long as it doesn't have walls, it's still a patio, and the area is not considered. I'm just thinking of your example, which I thought of as well, of the spaces that have a roof and heating units, so it's more comfortable to sit outside, but without the walls, it's still not within.
You'll have to look at the definition of floor area, and they can put it up on the screen, and you'll have to decide that question.
Okay.
That's up to the
I
board.
mean, when you think about it,
Sue, I don't-
a beer garden,
What do you want me to put on the screen?
Do you have 14.9A1,
Okay.
which includes the definition of floor area?
Okay.
At least I believe that's what the discussion has been. Mr. Paxton, right, that's, yeah.
So our code doesn't specifically use the word patio, so we can apply that to this definition. Is our prerogative, or is there some other precedent for applying that word to it?
You have to decide that. You have to decide whether that would be, in your mind, an appurtenance, such as a porch
Okay.
and a balcony.
Because another point in the staff reports, it's not referred to as a patio, it's referred to as an outdoor service area.
I think you should wait maybe and hear what the staff has to say, and then they'll be able to come back and respond to it as well.
All right, thank you.
When you made your appeal, did you include the 6-page report by Payco Coach Consulting Engineers of Dallas? Did you include that report? Did you include the report from the students in Waterloo? Was that part of your appeal document?
We would say yes. I did not include actual physical hard copies, but there were links to both of those. And I think I included maybe 2 links to one of them. I think I had 2 links to the Pacheco Coach, because there's 2 things I referenced. And so after I cited it, I had the link to both of those. And then to the University of Iowa Waterloo study, we also included a link to that.
Were you able to provide to the city any links or definitions of what the City of Iowa City requires in the code for a parking analysis?
We did not.
Thank you.
I'd like to kind of return back to the issue of patio and whether or not we count that as floor area, just to get that resolved.
Yeah, let me make a suggestion that we listen to the staff report and incorporate that into the our response to the staff report, because that's where it's going to be settled.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board. My name is Danielle Sisman. I'm the acting building official for the City of Iowa City. I've been the building official since May of 2018. The minor modification, as you've heard probably a couple times tonight, was for 305 North Gilbert Street and was granted to allow a 50% reduction in the minimum off-street parking requirement from 8 to 4 spaces to facilitate the adaptive reuse of a small 1,250 square foot commercial building being converted from auto repair to a restaurant. As the building official, I determined that the request met the qualifying standards, the special circumstances, and the approval criteria in our city code, which empowers staff to administratively grant flexibility where strict application of zoning standards would be impractical for small-scale projects. The applicant provided a parking demand analysis prepared by a licensed civil engineer demonstrating that the expected parking demand for the proposed use could be met largely on-site and supplemented by nearby public parking. I independently verified the site conditions, local parking supply, and use intensity, concluding that the reduction would not result in significant spillover parking into adjacent residential areas. The modification aligns with the purpose of the city's parking regulations to ensure that most parking demand is accommodated while allowing adaptive reuse and reinvestment in older commercial properties. The decision balances the public interest in managing neighborhood parking with the city's policy objective to promote small-scale, pedestrian-friendly redevelopment in the downtown transition area or the Central Business Service Zone, CB2. The appellant's arguments, as I understood them, centered on two main claims. First, that the qualifying standards for granting the parking reduction were not met because the parking demand analysis was inadequate. And second, that the modification was inconsistent with the intent of the city's parking regulations. I believe both claims are without merit. As to the first claim about adequacy of the parking demand analysis, the appellant asserted that the modification should not have been granted because a formal parking demand study was not provided. However, the city code does not prescribe a specific form or format for such an analysis. By design, the minor modification process allows administrative discretion and a level of review proportional to the minor nature of such requests. The parking demand information submitted, an email prepared by a licensed Iowa professional engineer, met this standard. It included all relevant data such as hours of operation, peak occupant load, travel mode, split, and staff independently verified the information using our site visits, aerial imagery, and understanding our zoning code for parking. The examples provided by the appellant actually demonstrate that a variety of approaches are acceptable for evaluating parking demand. One was a brief consultant report for a much larger 35,000 square foot Dallas shopping center along a busy arterial street. The other was a university class project based on simple car counts. These examples support rather than undermine the validity of the reliance on professional engineering input appropriate to the scale of this project. Second, consistency with the intent of the parking regulations. The appellant further claimed the modification violates the purpose of the parking requirements by encouraging parking encroachment into nearby neighborhoods. In fact, the evidence shows the opposite. The property can still accommodate at least half of its projected parking demand on site. In addition, the city provides ample on and off-street public parking very nearby this site. The small scale of the use, coupled with the downtown proximity and multimodal access, ensures that most of the parking demand need will be met without negative neighborhood impacts. The intent of the minimum parking standards is to ensure that most demand is accommodated while allowing flexibility for unique or small-scale properties. The granted modification satisfied this intent by supporting adaptive reuse, efficient land use, and reinvestment in the downtown area without compromising public parking resources or neighborhood conditions. If you want me to address patios, I can, but I'll open it up to let you ask me questions if you want.
Now, my first question is, does Code 14.5A.4 define the requirements for what specific data must be collected or what methodology must be used in a parking analysis?
No, it does not.
Does the city have a form to revisit what you already stated? I would just like to ask the question again. Is there a form or a template that the city provides when asking for a parking analysis?
So when the city is asking for a parking analysis, it depends on the context in which we're asking. For an administrative review, such as a minor modification, no, there's no template, and there's no general pre-meeting to kind of coach an applicant on how to go about that. In a much more regulated or a much more intense review where something might be going through rezoning, going before the Planning and Zoning Commission, eventually to City Council. In that case, our transportation staff and the Metropolitan Planning Organization might meet with an applicant to go over what form of analysis they would like to see certainly addressed in that. But even in those much more intensive reviews, what analysis gets performed is still very fluid.
All right, thank you.
I guess I'm going to look for what you think about this statement as staff. So looking at the parking requirements and considering the area on the patio that will be seating area, that will have tables and chairs and bodies in them, on them, I noticed that the parking requirement is one space for every 150 square feet of floor area, which is within the building, or space is equal to a third of the occupant load of the seating area, whichever is less. So even if you took, and I think the definition establishes that floor area is included within the exterior walls of a building, which excludes the patio. But if you took the seating area of the interior plus the exterior and calculated it at a third of that occupant load, it's still whichever is less. So even if the seating area between the patio and the building exceeded 8, it would still be 8. Or if it was less than 8, then the parking requirement would have been less than 8. You use whichever number is less. So it seems that the outdoor patio seating area is simply just not a factor in this discussion. Is that?
I would agree with your analysis, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think the standard is definitely whichever is less, and I think you've hit it right on the, exactly on. I can also, if you would like me to talk a little bit about those standards, since you brought up that table 5A2, the parking requirement, that's a minimum parking requirement based on the same kinds of analysis that some of these parking analysis also reference the standard guidebooks that engineers use when estimating demand for parking. That's cooked right into our parking minimums already. So they're already based, and they're already a proxy for those kinds of generalized studies that have been performed nationwide, past standards and policy judgments the city has made. So our parking minimums already account for those kinds of estimates and that kind of analysis. So they're the basis, and then in this case, this particular applicant looked at their very site-specific and land use-specific needs and refined that further to prove that they didn't need to meet that 8 number, the 8 parking stall number, that they could function at a lower rate because of their site-specific and operational-specific criteria.
Nancy, Mark.
So the patio area really does not, in your assessment, really does not play into this at all?
Staff would not interpret the parking minimum as being based on a patio area. It's based on a portion inside a building, or even things you might think of as building as porches and balconies, excluding those, certainly excluding a patio as not being inside a building. It's not based on that. Now, as Board Member Tallman brought up, the standard also references a seating area. So if you wanted to think about the patio as a seating area, it still reverts back to whichever is less. So whether your parking standard is based on that or not, it's still going to go to the lesser number. Staff would not have used the patio as a seating area calculation.
And the first criteria for this was that there was issues with the site or some peculiarities to the structure how did that weigh into your assessment? What's odd about this structure to start off?
Sure. So other
And
than
I
the-
know that it was, a completely different use, but other than that, what was your thinking on that?
So moving on from the qualifying circumstances, now we're talking about special circumstances. So staff's analysis of the special circumstances that applied to this particular property was that it's of a small size and shape. It's pre-existing, it's a small size and shape. The lot itself is small, the building is small. It's a corner lot, it's an infill lot, it's already developed all around it. It's certainly not a modern-sized commercial lot. It's also in close proximity to downtown, which is a special circumstance for itself. And all of the site is already developed. This applicant's not proposing to change the building. They're not proposing much of a change to the parking lot other than to close one of those driveways. So those are the special circumstances that warranted the site being eligible for a minor mod.
Nancy?
And that can be found on page 34 of your packet if you'd like.
Julie? Oh, anybody else before I say anything? What? I just want to check, make sure that anybody has anything else to say before I say anything.
Not right now.
Okay. According to the code, the building itself, the current building, would require 8 parking spaces, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If there was no patio involved in this, would they have the ability to provide 8 spaces on that lot if it was just the building?
I'm not sure I have the existing site in front of me, but it's largely paved. If they changed nothing, they probably could fit more cars on there than 4.
If you closed
They
off
might not be
that curb
conforming
cut
parking
on
spaces.
Gilbert Street, for example, when I look at that property, if you close off that curb cut, I can visualize 8 parking places on that lot. Standard, I think was it 15 feet depth?
9 by 18 is a conforming parking stall.
A 5 by?
9 feet
9
by 18.
Okay. So is it your position that the special circumstances, the impracticality is the lot itself, regardless of the patio? Because my concern is the creation of the use of the patio area creates the impracticality of providing 8 parking places.
It's also a change in use. So it's going from I'm going to say quick vehicle servicing, but I'm not sure if that's right. It's going from an auto repair use to an eating establishment.
All right.
So it's also the use as well. That drives our parking code standards. It's not the site. So it's not like you have a certain size site and that's how much parking you can fit on it. The parking code anticipates parking demand and then.
Go back to the question of the use of the property as proposed as a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
All by itself, the 1,250 square feet would require 8 parking spaces.
Correct.
Okay. And the reason you can't provide 8 parking spaces is because of some other practical impediment to that. And when I'm looking at this, the only practical impediment to providing the 8 spaces is the patio area.
The ownership might disagree. I'm not going to make the case for their business model, but I believe that part of their decision to operate the use they are proposing is that it would be impractical to expect a successful operation with that much parking. That they need use of the site in other ways, whether it's an outdoor seating area for seasonal dining or not. But I can't speak to whether they need the.
They have mentioned some points that they have a identified capacity of 35 to 45. I assume that means just internal space is what they're predicting as the capacity. That's the way I read the reports.
they indicated their maximum anticipated peak hour would be 35 to 45 customers.
Okay, and I want to make sure I understand that. That means customers served inside the building.
Or coming to take something away. I don't know,
Okay.
that would be a question for the applicant.
Okay. But and I'm using the word patio here, but I like the staff report's description as outdoor service area better. That's a more precise definition than patio. The addition of an outdoor service area, which is much larger than the original building, will increase, it seems, and the whole purpose of having the outdoor service area is to increase the usage of the building, usage of the business. Is there a flaw in that logic? I don't know.
There are other ways to activate and use the outdoor area besides seating for patrons. It might be entertainment. It might be where you put your live entertainment for a short period of time. It does not necessarily have to be seating. I don't believe that it was how they program that space would probably change over the year, and that was not part of the consideration.
Okay, so I'm still going to just set aside my supposition that remove the proposed patio area, you have room for 8 parking spaces to satisfy the requirement of the code. Now, unless there's an engineer in the building that can say that's not possible based on the allowed space, especially if you cut off that curb cut. And I'm not trying to make a decision here. It's just trying to understand the logic of reducing the parking requirement while facilitating an increase in the number of people using the business. There seems to be a sort of logical flaw in that as far as the decision goes.
It's a matter of how you prioritize the space you have, whether you're going to prioritize it for cars or for people.
Okay, but if you prioritize it for people, you're increasing increasing the demand for parking.
Only if they all drive there, and if all 35 to
That's-
45 of them drove alone.
That's
They're-
another debatable issue.
So the engineer provided evidence that they thought the modal split between people driving and parking to the site or people arriving at the site in other modes was that the people that would choose to drive to the site was lower in this location than our basic parking minimums anticipate.
Is that, which I want to come back to the patio service area issue, because this leads into another question, which is their finding in the report. I had a hard time finding which particular report they were talking about, because there's a reference to an early report that was submitted, which you say to discount because it was not part of your
Sure.
decision.
Page 40 of your packet is what staff used as the information.
What's the date on that?
That is the one that is dated August 19th.
Okay, and that's a fairly short email, as I recall, this one here. That's the gist of the report right there in front of us. For me, there's some empirical facts there, but there's also sort of more assertions than analysis in that report. That this is what we're going to do. This is what I look at that area and I perceive it differently. I'm having a hard time understanding, again, why you're increasing the capacity of the business, but by reducing the supply of parking
So
for the
parking
capacity.
is about
Yeah.
peak hour. So in this August 19th email, you see their expected peak hours of operation to be between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. You also see that they expect 35 to 45 patrons at that time during that peak hour of use. They also provide the modal split of 10% arriving in a car and parking. So yes, you do have to do some math to kind of come to the conclusion that 3.5 to 4.5 parking stalls is what their demand at peak hour would need. The rest of the time of the day, they wouldn't even need that much.
Okay.
It's not uncommon for staff to gather data and have to kind of connect dots for applicants when these are very minor applications.
Did you ask the applicant where employees are going to park?
No, we did not ask that question.
Okay. I noticed that part of the code says specific regulations may be modified or waived, and if conditions met, a minor modification may be improved in whole or in part with or without conditions. Was there any discussion of conditions applied to this?
Sure, there is one condition on this approval, and it's tied to the substantial compliance with the site plan they showed us. So closing that driveway and putting the parking stalls more or less in the location that they indicated.
So there was no discussion of perhaps reducing the size of the patio to supply additional parking?
We would not have had a great basis to demand more parking of them than their parking demand analysis was saying to us they needed.
Okay, but the parking demand is based upon the conditions that they themselves impose on the site.
Their parking demand analysis is provided by their licensed engineer who has access to those traffic manuals and estimates of how much parking would be generated and the ownerships.
I go back to my basic assertion. This is a decision based upon an impracticality of the lot imposed by the developer, not because of the lot itself. It's the developer has chosen to take out 1,600 square feet of the lot for service, and thus making the 8 spaces normally required by the building itself impractical. Was there any talk about nailing down hours of operation, specifying that if that's what you say, that's what it's going to be, and then you have to come back and change it? One of the things that was used was the accessibility of a municipal lot. Where is that lot?
There's a parking lot just to the west of Bluebird on Market Street of over 50 parking spaces operated by the city.
Yeah,
It's currently
those are the
vacant,
meter spaces.
underutilized. We checked with transportation for utilization there. It's not full. They don't have passes that they've sold to day users, so that is available. Then there's also on-street metered parking nearby and on-street non-metered parking.
Okay, here's my concern with that. That municipal parking area, to me, is irrelevant to this particular location. I do not see, because a lot of this, your decisions, a lot of staff decisions, there's a subjective factor. I don't see someone saying, I want to eat there, but I'll park a block away and walk back to that location. So the municipal lot is basically a non-factor from my point of view. Also, there's any reference to comparable business, downtown pet malls and stuff, those are all geographically irrelevant. The basis of the demand is people want to go and get as close as possible to. If they're going to park in the Bluebird lot, they're next to the Bluebird, the Hamburg Inn, to not John's, but George's. I don't see those as factors justifying the reduction in parking on the lot itself here.
Well, with all due respect, I don't believe that matches current engineering practice. The studies of walking behavior in Iowa City, cities like Iowa City and across the nation, clearly demonstrate that people will walk much farther than the front of a building to get in. If they need to walk from a parking lot that's less than a quarter of a mile away, that's definitely within a walking distance, and we're encouraging walkability in our community. I think we do quite a bit more walking here than the national average. So with all due respect, I would push back against that assertion that that is not an accurate representation of walking behavior.
With all due respect, accepted and extended as well to you, because I disagree with that assessment. So, is the assumption that a patio area is there primarily to facilitate more business, or just the current 35 to 45? I mean, I'm trying to get through your thought processes of what is the purpose of the patio that you're approving for this business, because it's contiguous to, and if you put a roof over this and screens in the wintertime, this is not a patio. This is an outdoor service area. You could also call it an outdoor dining area.
So,
do you know whether or not, for example, people can sit on the patio and have a waiter or waitress come out and take their order on the patio?
So the purpose of a minor modification is to allow flexibility for adaptive reuse of existing properties. This is an existing property. They want to convert the use from an auto-centric use to a dining establishment. They've indicated that in order to be successful at that, they would like to request they requested the 50% reduction in parking for which they met the qualifying standards for.
But
So
they-
that was the analysis about whether it was necessary or not for their
They're saying the
operation.
only way this can be successful is if we have an outdoor service area. Even though the building itself supposedly will accommodate 35 to 45. I mean,
I'm not sure I could answer that analysis for you. That was not part of staff's decision,
Okay.
whether their business would be using that as in that combination.
Before I keep talking, I just want to make sure there's nobody else on the board has a question.
Well, I just want to say that I think some of your questions are best directed to the business owners because they have to do with their analysis of how many people they need
Okay.
to serve at a time for it to work.
Also, keep in mind what the board's criteria are. I think that's important. You've got to, this is what you need to look at, not a criteria that council didn't include. So again, special circumstances, not detrimental to public health, set on in 14B1. So that's what the board needs to look at those criteria. You may want different criteria to be in there, but that necessarily they are. So
We're talking about detriment to the public good. Parking is the issue here. Is a reduction in parking here lead to any kind of detrimental impact on the public? Would 8 spaces be less of a detriment than 4? And again, I'll talk to the property owner, but basically what we're dealing here is a question of the staff. So we have to understand, I think, the process that led the staff to reach these decisions, and I want to, what factors led in and what factors did not lead into the decision. I do not yield in my assertion that the basic problem with this decision is the fact that the problem with the property layout is a problem not unique to the property, but created by the applicant itself, leading to the requirement. And so I'm not sure that satisfies the intent of the code or honors the code or whatever. So I'm going to make sure, okay. I will stop here because unless the board has any more questions for the staff, we need to hear from anybody else. Thank you. So at this time, we're inviting, first of all, anybody that has information or facts in support of the, in support of the appeal, not in support of the staff, in support of the appeal.
Just want to make sure you can hear me. Hello, my name's Mike Oliveira. I'm the owner of Prestige Properties. For those people that don't know our company, we're a company that we specialize in student housing and some commercial development, not only in Iowa City, but in Illinois and Chicago, Evanston particularly, and in Northern California, Bay Area. Our company is unique in that we own and manage all our own buildings. I live at 331 North Gilbert. If you please put the map up of the properties. Our company owns 7 adjacent properties. And the reason why I want to point out where I live is because I'm right down the street where the old shelter house was. We, as a property we purchased and remodeled. But we own the supplement buildings on North Gilbert Street, the doctor's office right across the street from the proposed applicant, who, by the way, has sent in several letters, emails that against this because of the problems with the parking that we're having in that area. One of the things that and we have a rental units next door to the property, and 325 North Gilbert is one of our buildings to the north, and then 331 is at the corner of Davenport and Gilbert. So our properties go all the way past the applicant's area to where the daycare center is. You guys know where the daycare center is on this map? I don't have a pointer, but from Pagliai's, you have the laundry, and then right there is the daycare. And that's important because I'm here to talk about parking in this area because I believe I'm a subject matter expert for living here and dealing with the dynamics of what we are faced with in this neighborhood. And I asked the other business owners to write letters, and they did. And it kind of misrepresented in these packages because this last package should have included those letters to the board here. One of the things that has happened, at 5 o'clock on Gilbert Street, parking is allowed on both sides of the street. And so what happens is on Gilbert Street, it's very congested, meaning that in the mornings when the people are going to the daycare, most of them are immigrant families dropping off their kids and going through the alley up to Gilbert Street, it causes a little bit of problems. I brought some pictures of a recent car accident that happened on October 1st at 7:20 a.m. when a car pulled out of that alley onto Gilbert Street because you can't see. And I've got this, I don't know if I can pass this out. I'm sorry I didn't bring my computer to hook it up. But that was a young lady that hit an Afro-American lady who just dropped off her child at the daycare center, smashed into that car. I was on my porch having coffee at that time. I ran down there to see if they needed help. But that's the issue we have going in the morning and an issue in the late afternoon, 4:30 and 5, when the restaurant will be open. Because the car at 5 o'clock starts coming there on both sides of the street. Now, I asked the city, some questions about, parking analysis, but one of the things they didn't do is they didn't go over here and observe what this neighborhood is happening. And one of the things that is happening, when you park both sides of Gilbert Street, it's only 18 feet of space. I have a measurement here, another thing I took to show what it looks like when you put a tape across Gilbert Street within the two cars. And it measures 18 feet. So at night, at 5 o'clock, going on to the next morning to 8 o'clock, the cars can't get through Gilbert Street. So they have to stop, and one car goes, and you have to wait. Now, That's just with the traffic and the people living in the area now. Let alone adding more congestion with a restaurant that doesn't have enough parking. My concerns, and I'm all for another restaurant in the area. I probably frequent it a lot. What I don't want to do is I don't want to endanger the people that are coming out of the daycare with their kids pulling out because of the way we have the parking dynamics on both sides of the street after 5 o'clock. And the daycare does go after 5 o'clock because some of my workers drop off their kids there. So I do know that that's an issue. And the daycare does not go north. When they pull out, they like to pull out south, whatever reason, onto Gilbert Street when they drop off. My doctor's office across the street is worried about, hey, I have all this open parking space. Somebody comes in there and parks, she can't get in there during after hours. She services a lot of the Amish community, and she does take people after 5 o'clock. And she said to me, you know, parking's a problem. We don't want to have another thing on the north side like it's happening down there at Big Grove. Big Grove is a disaster of parking for the businesses across the street. You know, I got to tell you, a parking analysis is needed to determine the impact. You know, I have every morning people that work at the university parking up and down Bloomington Street. And these guys are 40, 50 years old. They get out of their cars and they park there, get on their little scooters, and they drive to the university. Now, the university has assured me that they're going to build some more parking at the hospital, but I'm not so sure that's going to help the impact of the neighborhood. But what needs to happen is the staff needs to get out at different times of the hours. And as a person that has a lot of consulting experience, I used to tell a lot of corporations, the best thing to do when you have a project like this is to get out there and walk the neighborhood. Go out to the site to see what's really going on. And what's going on here is we have a parking problem in this area, and I don't know how it can be managed better, but there's just not enough space. And every morning, the city staff from the parking department loves Gilbert Street because they go out there and issue tickets. And because the kids don't move their cars right away, and it's pretty tough. So, life safety issue is my concern for being here tonight. The issue is, are we going to add another restaurant that has limited parking spaces that is going to further distract or compromise the neighborhood? And I don't want to be the parking police across the street with my parking areas that we have fighting tenants that may want to come in or people that want to come into that restaurant. They see that open spot, well, I'm going to go park there. So I thank you for your time. If you got any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And one of the things I just want to add here, I don't want to take away from my lawyer's thing, but when I read that report, and I read Brian Bellick's profile and the engineer that was here, he is a sewer specialist, not a parking specialist. The staff of Iowa City departments blindly used their recommendation from that engineer. I'm not going to say his qualifications are not there, but that's not what his qualifications are on the website of the firm that was hired to give that information to the city. Thank you.
Any questions, comments? No, thank you. Anybody else want to speak in support of the appeal? If not, we'll hear from people who want to support the city staff report.
Good evening, staff, board. I'm James Kincaid. I am the licensed Iowa professional engineer that has been referenced several times this evening. I work for Axiom Consultants and was hired on behalf of the owners for the minor modification application that's set to be, or that we've been talking about this evening. I'll be brief. There's been a lot of discussion. I don't need to reiterate the site plan itself, but I'll try to answer some of the questions that the board has, kind of engineering-based questions that you guys have already talked about, as well as just some brief statements regarding the application. I want to preface all of this with saying one of the best parts about working with Iowa City staff and the Neighborhood Development Services staff is they keep us engineers very on code. They are diligent in making sure that our application is compliant and follows to the letter of the ordinances. So as staff explained, we did, as part of the minor modification application, a parking analysis report was submitted, and there is no template for this through the ordinance. And due to the nuance of the minor mod application process, it finds itself in the form that an email provided by myself as an answer to staff questions to help staff understand the proposed use, how that aligns with the modification that we are seeking. The required stalls and the floor area conversation is all based on the requirements in the ordinance, which are, as staff alluded to, derived from empirical data that's used all across the country. Those numbers aren't pulled from feelings or anything else other than like empirical data understood with the use of the building and those peak hour calculations. So I just want to reiterate that the parking analysis as provided both on the original site plan and with some additional narrative in a follow-up email by myself is typical to my experience at Axiom's application through these minor modifications. This is not a scenario that is atypical or different from other applications. The analysis provided through some coordination back and forth is in line with my experience with this sort of application. I want to address the questions of the existing site and its possible ability to accommodate the entire 8 parking stalls required. The applicant who is here, or the owner who's here, can speak more to the entire, the expected use of this patio area, but I want to say through coordination and concepting and the idea of this adaptive reuse that's part of the minor mod application, we wanted to use and seek modifications for a business model that fits all the needs as well as works in with our understood framework of the code and what this business sees themselves needing. So that's how we ended up with proposing for, seeking the minor modification to have the 8. On a more practical level, part of the eventual build out of this would be to go through a staff reviewed site plan that would require us to propose or to install and stripe compliant parking stalls. The site as it exists now is a complete sea of pavement. It may look as though you could accommodate an entire 24-foot lane with up to 8 stalls that are all 9 foot by 18 foot, but with the desired use of the site being some again, adaptive reuse, some nice outdoor area that it will not always be used for seating, but is at least not a sea of pavement in the form of an automotive care. We proposed a plan to remove the driveway on Gilbert and to keep the two drives on the south side. And part of the plan contingent on the acceptance of the minor mod is to completely demolish and remove that pavement on the Gilbert Drive and then reestablish a curb and gutter along there. And through some initial buy-in from staff, we have enough room to add 2 more on-street parking stalls onto Gilbert. So it's not, those stalls aren't bespoke to this site, but there's kind of a net gain on some on-street parking. I also want to state that in the criteria there, in the language is that that staff may require an engineered study in reference to a parking demand analysis. There have been projects that we've done, large residential projects that require and ask very large, very formal engineering traffic studies. It's not something that is not done or refused to do, but by nature of the minor mod process, they are very nuanced, very complicated, and in scale much smaller than these. So that is the kind of open dialogue that's seen via some of the email snips as use for a parking demand analysis. I don't want it to be misleading that it's not a formal report, letterhead, or things like that, but it is not, it's not anecdotal information. It is based on the floor area calculations that are based on empirical data that it's used all across the country. To answer some of the last gentleman's concerns regarding neighborhood parking, and some issues that some of the private businesses are experiencing with their own private parking lots. As a proposed site, we don't inherit the problems of our neighbors' private parking lots. They have lots of avenues that they can take to mitigate non-users or people who are delinquent parking in their places. Our analysis does not rely at all on anybody's private parking lots. It is the on-street parking, the public parking, and even here you can see how close that public lot is, kind of to the southwest of us. I want to open it up, I guess, for some engineering-based questions. I know there was a lot of questions based on the use of the patio area and things. The owner is here to answer some of those, but I want to make myself available for any sort of technical or engineering-related questions that the board may have.
Board? Mark? Anybody? Paula? This is an engineering question. How is the patio going to be created? Is it just simply going to be fenced off and that's the area and using the current concrete surface?
Yes. The scope of the improvements to the site will be some restriping on the south side to designate the parking stalls in the drive aisle. The only pavement removal will be the public driveway throat. And then whether it's kind of a pedestrian fence, ornamental in style, or striping, something like that, that's what the owner has expressed their interest in using to designate that north patio area.
This might be a question for the owner to answer eventually, but do you have any idea of what is the capacity of the people seating capacity of this 1,600 square foot patio area?
I will lean on the owner to answer that question.
Okay, great.
150 square feet per person.
That's the building, yeah.
So that'd be
Would
10.
you assume the same for the patio?
Well,
The
I'm just
board,
trying
if
to
you're
get a sense
talking
of
with each
how-
other, you need to speak into the microphone.
yeah. I'm just trying to get a sense of how that patio will be used, what sort of capacity is envisioned and how that capacity will be facilitated. So we can ask the owner about that, I guess.
Any remaining questions for me?
Any questions? Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else speak in support of the staff decision?
Hello. My name is Brad Temple. I'm one of the owners of the new proposed business that's going into this location.
Excuse me. Could you say our last name again, please?
Temple,
Temple, okay,
Temple.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I want to get started by thanking all of you for being here tonight. I am not a parking expert, and part of that reason is the reason of me not being a parking expert is one of the reasons we sought out Axiom Consultants in this situation. So there is a couple things that I just wanted to speak on in regards to the entire scenario and the process that's been going through. This appeal process, when I was reading through the appeal, I know that it was mentioned a couple times tonight about something in Dallas, Texas, something in Waterloo, Iowa. I couldn't help but think to myself that each of those two places are completely separate cities than Iowa City. The way that they want to govern their city and run their city has no bearing on how Iowa City chooses to write their laws, ordinances, and enforce those. During this whole process, we first started out with a couple people and walking over somewhere. Believe it or not, we walked from downtown the Petmore area over to this establishment one night. When we heard it was for sale, to kind of take a look at everything. At that time, we started putting a process together. We contacted the city a couple different times, asking them some questions. We'd never done this before. The city kind of gave us the lay of the land of how it would go. I think I heard a little bit earlier about that process. One thing I learned about that process, it's very, you put your presentation together and hand it to the city. It's not, they don't work back and forth with us. So when we had a question, it was, you need to do this part of the project, turn it into us. So we went through all of that. Doing that, we realized that we needed to hire Axiom Consultants as an engineering firm to help us out with that process, put all this stuff together, and then put together the minor modification. Around that time, one of my other partners, Nick, and myself, probably 3 or 4 nights in a row stood in that parking lot for 2 hours a night trying to figure out how are we going to come up with 8 parking spots. And that was without even putting a patio anywhere. We were trying to figure out how do you do it? Do you do it this way? And what we had come to understand from looking at some codes is that we needed 9 feet wide per parking spot, 18 feet deep. But then what we never really took into account is you need the space to back up out of that parking spot, fully back out without touching off your property and then being able to leave. And so putting all this into our heads, being out there with tape measures and measuring everything, we didn't see how we would get to that many parking spots. Obviously, it's been mentioned tonight, the patio. The patio is something that we do believe is viable to the success of this business. It's something that we don't believe the business will be successful without. So that was our full intent from the beginning, is what are our options with the city if we wanted to do a change of use for this space into a restaurant space. And that's where we found out about the minor modification process. And everything that we read in the city codes and the ordinance made perfect sense to us that these type of situations are meant for the minor modification process. So we decided to go with that process. We talked to the people at Axiom, got them all of our information. We met on site. I know people had talked about that, about people need to be on site. Axiom has been on site. We had meetings on site. They've been able to look at things. And then they had, I believe, if not twice, at least once, somebody going out and doing site surveys on the property. So I do believe we've tried to follow every part of the ordinance to its truest. This is a building that was built in 1948. It was an Amco gas station. I believe there was 3 of them built in this town. And one of them also currently houses a restaurant called Pop's Barbecue. Our intent is to leave that building the exact same as always has been. I know that earlier on the minor modification process, or why that would exist, she was asked a couple of questions of what made this a unique situation. One of the ones that I didn't hear was it sits directly on the lot lines. So it sits on the west and the north lot lines. So there are multiple things with this process we've gone through that aren't normal, and that we've had to come up with ways to how do we think we can make this work. So that's where we are today. And that's kind of how I wanted to talk to you guys about necessarily the appeal process from my eyes at this point. The other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight is the parking situation and parking just in general. As I mentioned earlier, I'm no expert in parking. I have, as I did also mention earlier, sat there probably 3, 4, 5 nights in a row for a couple hours each of those nights trying to figure out that parking situation. I've been in that parking lot no less than 30 times in the last 3 months, trying to envision the new business, envision what's going to take place, how it'll all look. And not one time had I been there where I have not been able to, with my own eyes, look this way or this way and see open street parking. And that is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's at 5 o'clock at night. That's at 8 o'clock at night. That's at midnight. And so I understand I'm not an engineer. I'm not a parking expert, but I can see it with my own eyes. I would also say, and we mentioned in, I think it was in an email somewhere, there was my partner and myself have been in the restaurant bar industry in this town for over 20 years combined. We have places that are in downtown Iowa City. Both of our businesses have zero parking. We've never had a problem with that zero parking at either one of our businesses. And then I would also kind of point out as well, Mr. Baker, I know you mentioned that parking lot, that's the city-owned parking lot next to Bluebird. Maybe not think that's a viable parking space to then come to our business. I would respectfully disagree with that. And I would say that because there are actually a multitude of restaurant spaces in that neighborhood that have zero parking. The Webster that just opened a couple years ago has zero parking spaces. Paper Crane has zero parking spaces, and it just opened less than a year ago. And I could keep going down. George's has limited parking spaces. I would say that also the walk distance from the Hamburg, which you mentioned, to that parking lot is the exact same walk distance from our location to that parking lot. It just happens to be down an alley instead of through the other access. So I would actually say, because I've actually parked there, I do eat in that locations. I eat at Bluebird. I eat consistently at those restaurants in that neighborhood, and I have zero problems parking whenever I go there. We just ate at the Webster last week. I parked next to the Bluebird. I walked up the Webster. When we left there, we walked into George's, had a beer at George's, and we left. So I would disagree with the fact that there is no parking. That parking does not service that whole community area. I actually would say the opposite. It services it very well. We've also, when all of this came through and this appeal process came through, and we have the videos, we can send them an email as well. If you'd like us to produce more videos for you, we can. But we actually walked down through that entire neighborhood, the 4-block radius of that entire neighborhood at different times of the day. We took video walking through. That lot in question that is next to Bluebird specifically was never over 50% full at any time. And that's including all the street parking that was also available. As James also mentioned, the driveway on the east side of the property on the Gilbert Street there, in our whole minor modification process, it was part of our minor modification process to agree to close that driveway. That will create more green space. And then also, as James mentioned, we'll create 2 additional parking spots on the city street. Obviously, they're not parking spots for our business or our property, but they do produce more parking, which has been a concern in the situation. The last thing I did want to point out, as I was able to read through some of the letters that people wrote in either favor or not of what we were trying to do in that location. And when all this all this went down, just trying to figure out, what was going on. And one thing that I found very interesting in this situation, Mr. Oliveira pointed out to it when he addressed you earlier, is that he owns the 2 houses directly north of this property, and he owns, I think he said, 7 properties in that whole neighborhood. In one of the emails sent by John Engelbrecht, he's the executive director of Public Space One. John noted that Mr. Oliveira and Prestige Properties rents these single-family homes with small driveways in some cases up to 8 people per house. I would say that there's no way that you park 8 vehicles in one parking driveway. So I understand that there might be a concern of Mr. Oliveira that his tenants do not have parking. And I would echo what someone previous said, is that a business owner or a property owner, that their problem of not having enough private parking for their tenants is not a problem of anyone else. So at the end of the day, I really appreciate you guys' time and the ability to be here. Our intention is to open a nice little restaurant. We do not believe the parking is an issue whatsoever. And then to kind of finalize that for you, the percentages that were put down for walking and biking and all of those things. It was also said earlier tonight that Iowa City has a longstanding drive for a walkability city, right? I remember, I believe it was, I think it was Mayor Brandt for Iowa City, many, many years ago, started the pedestrian mall. And when he started the pedestrian mall, people lost their minds. And they said, you can't do this. People are not going to be able to drive their cars. Businesses won't survive here. And I would point out to you that all of these decades later, that pedestrian mall still thrives with business. Every weekend has people in there. They have people in there from clothing stores to restaurants, and all of them work together, and it's perfectly fine. I don't see any issues with that. So I think at the end of the day, the percentages we gave you as well, or that you received, or the city had received through the engineering firm, are very spot on. And I would invite anyone, if you ever wanted to come, I would gladly walk around with you. Rideshare in this town is massive. Ubers, it is the way to go. If you drive down Clinton Street on any given day, you see all the Ubers and the cars, the food delivery cars, parked along the side of the street, going inside to get stuff. That is real life. People are not driving. Statistics came out that the lowest consumption of alcohol ever in history has just been reported this last year. Drinking statistics for the city of Iowa City on DUIs is lower this year than it has been previous years. People drive less. And if we are true to our word that this is a walkable city, and I 100% believe it is, in all of those times I stood there trying to envision this business, we laughed looking back and forth because there's so many people, everyone is walking. You just see people walking back and forth all night long. So as far as any concerns about any of the other businesses around there, we don't believe anything that we will be doing will affect those businesses. And as also mentioned earlier, right on the south side of that property going west, where you see that probably a white minivan and a red car parked on the side street, there are 4 metered parking spots right there as well. So those are not public parking, that's the metered parking spots. So that's kind of where we're at. And if we have any more questions, I can try to answer those for you.
Questions?
I do have one more thing to say. I apologize. I heard you ask a couple questions about the patio, this infamous patio.
I'm sorry.
Is it the infamous patio? You mentioned I want to know the patio. So the patio will not be operated 12 months a year. In the state of Iowa, I would say both of our current businesses have patios. One of the businesses is in the Ped Mall, so that actually is there's city codes that say when they can have it and when they have to take that down. I believe it's like 6 or 7 months of the year they get to have a patio. I would probably work off that information that 6 to 7 months maybe you have viable outdoor seating areas. The other thing I would note is that usually in patio season, when you walk into a restaurant, a lot of the seats inside are empty. The patio's full. So I would say that we don't see and we don't envision having a full restaurant and then a full patio. We believe what it's going to be more of is that people will want to be on the patio, and that's why we need the patio to be a viable business.
Questions for Mr. Temple? No? Hold on. First of all, thank you very much. You've been very persuasive and very helpful. A couple of quick questions just to clear things up in my mind. What was your decision-making process in deciding that that's the size of the patio that you want?
So I think what is, when you think about a patio, and all of the things that are going into this patio, right, is that you're going to need seating. Maybe you want to have a little bags area over here where you can throw some bags. Is that the space does not, 1,600 square feet gets filled up very quickly, right? If you and me are playing bags and you're 20 feet apart, 20 feet apart are the bag sets, and then we stand behind the bag sets and we're tossing the bean bags back and forth.
I'm sorry. You're dealing with somebody who would never do that. I'm having a hard time visualizing.
Sure.
That.
So if you were playing horseshoes, if we put a horseshoe court on there, right?
Okay.
That horseshoe court would take up a large chunk of space on that patio. So it's not like you're, and if we have seating on that patio, the city has codes that say that we can only have, you have to have a 3-foot walkway to go here, and then those 3-foot walkways do not get counted into your occupancy. So when you have seating and people sit down, your occupancy is not going to count that walkway that's behind them. So when you say it's 1,600 square feet patio, it is a 1,600 square foot patio, and in comparison to the 1,250 square foot of the building, I would say it's a lot bigger. Yes, and that's why I would say the building is not viable to be a eatery if you don't have some sort of additional seating, right? And so during those summer months, that's where we think we can capitalize on the ability to be able to make those numbers work.
How much seating do you envision?
So we've met with the building guy in Iowa City. I would have to get his name. I met with a gentleman about a month ago or so, just to ask him how some codes work, some questions. We had looked at the codes and we had some questions to see if this works or not. When he went in there, we asked him a couple of questions. One of the questions was, will we need a sprinkler system, Ansel system? Because it's based off of square footage size. If you're below a certain square footage, you do not need that. We wanted to confirm that with him. There were some other things we wanted to confirm with him as well, and that's actually where we got, when we were finalized from him, he had told us that our occupancy will be roughly 40 people.
On the patio?
Inside.
Inside, okay.
40 to 45 people inside, and then he said that we can count on probably maybe 35 to 40 people on the patio. So those were the numbers we were working off, was in our heads were about 80 people total in that whole space if it was completely full.
Okay. Is the people on the patio, will they be having service from the inside to the patio, or do they have to order in and take it themselves out? I mean,
they could do either or.
Okay. Yeah. And the patio that you're planning, at your position, that's essential to the success of your business.
Sure.
Okay. and it's only going to be open about 6 months a year. And I understand profit margins. Let me backtrack a little bit to something you said earlier about when you were trying to visualize the parking layout on the lot that's there. And you couldn't see where you could get 8 spots in that lot.
Sure.
Did that take into account closing off the curb cut on Gilbert? Once you close that off, you still could not get 8 spots.
No, so I'll be 100% honest with you. It actually blew my mind. So the first few times we went to this location, we were looking at it, we're like, man, this place is massive. This parking lot's massive. And we're like, we could really do something really nice out here. We thought maybe you'd have some parking here. And what we realized really quick when we started doing the site survey and working with the engineers is like, well, the way that it looks right now isn't the way that it is. The property line, it's just, as James said, it's a sea of concrete right now. If the previous owner had to go in and put the lines in, you'd realize that what you think is probably 3 feet of their property isn't their property. So what you visualize right now, if you walked up to that right now and looked at that property and you would see, well, the sidewalk goes right here and there's this concrete that goes the rest of the way, and you'd think everything on the side of the sidewalk is the business's property. It's not. It goes another like 3 feet in and cuts right there. And so when you take that into account, when you come in off of the south side and come in off the east side, the reduction in that space, I mean, it really tightens it up even more. I don't believe you'd get 8 parking spots in that spot.
Off the top of your head, do you know the north-south dimension of the lot, what the length of that is, the north-south?
I can get that for you in a second. In addition to those things, like I mentioned on the east side, adding the green space, taking out the drive and adding the green space, we're also adding green space all on the north side in between, which will then be in between our property and that house to the north. And we're going to add green space and green screening there. We're also planning on adding green screening and green space on the west hand side, right by where you kind of see that car is on the bottom hand of that building.
While he's looking at that, let me make a
It's
couple of
75.
observations.
It's 75 feet.
75 feet. And so, and you would need, was it 19 feet?
18 feet deep by 9 feet wide.
Okay, so.
And can I just add, you also need a drive aisle. If it's two-way traffic, you need 22 feet. You also need some area for screening.
That's what I'm trying
And
to-
so it's not just the size of the parking space that they're considering. It's how the vehicles are traveling through the site as well.
That's what I'm trying to visualize. X number of feet for this, X number of feet for that.
I'm sorry. To answer your question, that was the reason it would actually give us more benefit. Closing up the east side on Gilbert gives the ability for us to have more parking spaces and not less. If that was still open, we'd have to account for people being able to pull in there, and that would create the two-way drive ability in there. If we close that, we don't have a two-way anymore, and it's a single drive-through.
Right. But that was your plan all along, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did I hear you just say that would give you more parking?
No, I said, so by closing that left-hand side, I thought you mentioned earlier, did we think we could get more parking if we left that open?
No.
Okay, so-
No, it's just the opposite.
Yes, well, but what I would say is if we left it open, you would have less parking spaces
I absolutely agree, yeah.
because you have to have the two-way
Right.
lanes instead of just the one.
I'm sorry if I misled your name, but that
I'm
was
sorry,
not.
I might have misunderstood you, I'm sorry.
Where are your employees going to park?
Our employees will park at the parking lot, or the parking right next to Bluebird.
Okay, was that some sort of pass? Does the city have passes for those? Are they just pay by the meter?
Yes, pay by meter, yeah. And if they, they can park there. The other thing I do want to highlight for you guys is that this is in the middle of a neighborhood of mostly rental properties. And that situation, we plan on having a lot of people come to eat from these properties. We plan to hopefully have people working for us that are living in these houses, right? And most of these people are students at the University of Iowa. And so I honestly do believe there are going to be multiple employees that we have that do not drive cars.
Okay. And just for the record, I tend to agree with you about the parking study aspects. We don't need we don't need the two options that the appellant offered. I thought that the local option was fine.
Sure.
But it still didn't make sense to me.
Sure.
So the question for me is not whether the parking standard was a viable parking analysis. It still didn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense to me that you're down to like you can get by with as many as 2 spaces. I think I heard that at one point.
No, we've never had 2. We only could get down to 4. I thought when you were talking earlier, I thought you were talking about the parking lot next to Bluebird, and you were saying that people don't want to park there and walk somewhere else. That's why I had mentioned that they do that to all those other businesses in that area that are the same distance as our business.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I apologize, slipped my mind. Oh, that was it. The other thing we kind of go back to in this whole process is reverting back to the city, right? Is one thing we know exists. We don't have it in our hands, but we can pull a Freedom of Information Act and get it. But the city of Iowa City does parking analysis, and they have that information. That city lot that's next to Bluebird, they have that parking information of what is it like at 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 5. They have all that parking analysis. So it's our belief that the city of Iowa City also used that parking analysis and the understanding of all of their parking analyses that they do for the city to make the decision on a minor modification.
Okay. Great. Any other questions? Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Temple.
Have a great night.
Anybody else want to speak in support of the applicant?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carl Sigworth. I'm an attorney from Bradley and Riley, and I represent the business owners. Just want to be mercifully brief because I know it's getting late. First, as the city staff has already pointed out, the term parking demand analysis is undefined in the Iowa City Municipal Code, and the city conducted an analysis via a discussion with the business owner's engineer regarding the rationale behind the request for a minor modification. After that discussion, in which the city did provide questions they wanted answered, and as a matter of fact, they also provided a template of questions that were answered by a prior minor modification applicant, which were answered by the business owner's engineer. The city elected to grant that minor modification. What the applicant is attempting to do here is substitute their judgment, and a judgment that is subjective and services the applicant's interest as the owner of a large number of rental properties, which other neighbors have mentioned create a large amount of traffic that already overflows from the organic parking spaces for those rental properties. They are trying to continue to externalize that burden onto the public parking available through the city, and they're trying to protect that externality by mounting this appeal here. In this case, the studies that they've asked for the board to adopt are for number one, for a project in Dallas of 30 times greater size, which the city staff pointed out, and a project that was conducted by a student group at the University of Iowa. The city in this case is allowed to maintain and follow the rules and standards that are clearly laid out in the municipal code, and they did that in this case. That also extends to their calculation of floor area, which in 14A9 says all space within the building, and that the building is defined as a structure having exterior walls. In this case, that would remove consideration of the exterior area of the building. And that's borne out in 14A9 by saying that things like patios and appurtenances are exempted from a floor area calculation. As the city's alluded to, as the business owner's engineer has alluded to, the minimum parking space requirements are data-based, but they are estimates, and those estimates could be lowered in the event that a special case exists. In this case, the business owners have demonstrated that just such a special case exists. There's ample public parking that's available within 1 block of the location. The site plan that they're submitting adds 2 public spaces back to the city's parking roster, and what the business owners propose to do is add another restaurant and a walkable friendly business to the north side neighborhood, enhancing food options for that area as well. So in the city's considered all those factors when considering whether or not to grant that minor modification, and they elected to do so. Their judgment should be allowed to stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else want to speak in favor of the city's decision? If not, this is also an opportunity now for the appellant to respond to anything that he would like to respond to.
Thank you, Paxton Williams again, and I'll be brief. We didn't ask, and we're not asking the city to adopt the examples of the parking demand analysis that we shared. We just wanted to give you all examples of what might appear in a parking demand analysis, and to also illustrate that they contain facts, methodology, and things that can be tested. And so in a sense, I'm up here kind of boxing a ghost, because there are many facts stated today about the analysis, about what went into it, about what people did, that we did not see. We saw that email that had certain things, and to clarify, it actually did say they could get it down to 2 to 4 parking spots. If you look at that email, it actually says that. It says they could have actually gotten it down to 2 spots. And so we're kind of boxing the ghost, because we believe there was really a rush to judgment. We're not saying what needed to be in a parking demand analysis, but it needs to be something that you can analyze, that you could test. These statements cannot be tested. They're just statements that we believe self-interested. And so even if you say there aren't any standards for a parking demand analysis, what's an analysis? I mean, there must be a definition for what an analysis is. An analysis just can't be a statement without a basis providing that. And so I just want to point that out. And I also would say, to the extent that, all of this represents a business decision by the applicant. And, my opposing counsel just made a comment about my client wanting to put out externalities into the community. I would just say this, my client, we follow the rules, we've done everything. And so that's why we're here today, to also follow the rules and say, help us understand what's possible, why it's possible. Because again, this analysis, this one-page email, how is it tested? I mean, I think that's it. And even in terms of the chair's question about getting it down to 2, and I think they testified, well, no, we didn't get it down to 2, but it actually says 2 to 4 parking spots here. And so that's kind of, what I would just say. We believe there was a rush to judgment. We believe there was no parking demand analysis in any sort of definition of an analysis. And we also believe that the intent of the ordinance is clear, that you're supposed to take into the actual lay of the land. And so again, and I'll end with this, to my prior example about if I have 1,000 square foot building, and if I have a 10,000 square foot parking spot that I'm going to use for the same purpose, that's pertinent information that can be used to look at the health of the community and the need for parking.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other?
Yes.
Who do you think should be responsible for doing the survey, the parking survey?
So I believe if you look at on the first page of the minor modification, it references the rule where it says the parking demand analysis must be done. And so we believe two things. One, I believe it's on the applicant's responsibility to do so, but then it should be tested by the city and then tested by anyone who would consider, this is a modification that affects everybody, right? And so everyone should be able to test whatever the results or conclusions are of the demand analysis. That is required. I think something was said that, it mentions how the city could ask for that. That is true, but the rule actually states, the ordinance states, it's required.
Great, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Anybody else want to speak in favor of the appellant?
I think we need to, my name's Mike Oliveira, I think we need to have a point of clarification here because some people had made some derogatory things in a letter that was sent to the board. In Iowa City, a rental permit in a building is based on two things. The way the building is designed for meeting the requirements for housing bedrooms and parking. So if you have a 4-bedroom house, you have to have at least 3 parking spots. Our buildings follow the strict guidelines that is set forth in Iowa City with regards to parking. And I find it very slanderous for attorneys, business owners, some community members to say that, oh, the landlords aren't following these requirements, because we are. The second thing is, I'd like to mention that, when it comes right down to us, we're in favor of a restaurant. We just think that there's a parking demand analysis needs to be done for the people that either are a renter or live in the neighborhood, and I totally disagree. In that neighborhood, you walk up the street, there's a single-family home right to the left. My house to the 2 blocks down. The house across the street is a single family. The other houses are single family right up the road. So it's all mixed in there. And to the left, you're going towards the university. Those 4 homes are all owned by one owner that has families and people living in them. So to say that it's all students in this area is not true. The issue we're going to have here, if we don't take a step back and look at this, it could cause irreparable harm to the neighborhood. And it's probably going to increase the number of accidents and the life safety of the people that are living in this neighborhood. And I'm one of them. And that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions? No? Thank you. Anybody else in favor of the appeal? Here's a chance for anybody who is opposed to the appeal to have their final say.
I'm James Kincaid, civil engineer for this. Again, I wanted to clarify a couple points made by the appellant. I wanted a big point of clarification here that I'm afraid has been missed is that the email provided by myself was a response to a request to additional information to parking analysis that was provided on the site plan exhibit that was more or less an appendix to the minor modification package as a whole. On that exhibit, there exists the parking analysis required more or less for this type of project, which is as simple as proposed building, its associated use, the required parking stalls per square foot or floor area of that building, the resultant requiring stalls, what we're providing, and how we're seeking a minor mod based on that reduction. That was the analysis that was originally submitted as part of the process. The email that's been referred to this evening is auxiliary and in addition to that original analysis. Staff had some questions that they wanted to get answered in addition to that analysis to further understand and apply the nuance of our answers to our ask to eventually reach a decision. That email and my responses to that are not the sole analysis that was provided as part of this application. And again, from my experience, and I gave it up to, lended myself to additional clarifications or questions or additional analysis as a request to the city saying, is this appropriate? We're happy to answer more, gather more information. It wasn't a malicious attempt to hide information or use or anything of that sort. And lastly, very small, a reference that we somehow in my email I'm claiming that we could have gotten away with 2 parking stalls. The full context of that is a question from staff saying, what is your expected parking demand during those peak hours? And in coordination with the ownership, our response is we expect to use 2 to 4 of those during those peak hours. Not that we can get to or something other than our expectation is that based on the parking analysis and our understanding of the use that we will use 2 to 4 of those for the operations of the business. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to speak opposed to the appeal?
Hi, my name is Jared Carroll. I am one of the new owners for the new establishment, and I have been a general manager at multiple establishments for the past 15 years in downtown Iowa City. And I just wanted to go over a couple things as far as to attest to the fact of walkability. On any given night, I can clarify that at least 90% of my employees walk to work. Some walk from Dodge and Bowery, which is 8-block walk. And I can also go to clarify that almost all of our customers that we have as regulars that we get to know, I know none of them drive there. They all either walk there or they ride share there. None of the students drive to class every day. Half of these kids don't even have cars. This whole city is a walkable city. And like we already aspected how these restaurants on the north side don't have any parking spots at all. And as far as safety goes, by looking at this map, closing off that entrance exit on the east side of the lot is going to do more for safety than a net gain of 2 parking spots added to the street. People pulling in and out of there with the exits right across the street and then the alley exit and then the 4-way intersection, just by closing off that throat is going to be an enhancement to safety as compared to 2 net gained parking spots on the street. And then I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Anybody else opposed to the appeal? Anything that the city would like to add? If not, we have an opportunity for final statements by the appellant and by the city.
Paxton Williams again, and I won't belabor the point. I will just point out the August 4th, 2025 letter that I believe was referenced as the parking demand analysis. It's part of the packet. It's not a parking demand analysis. That's all I would say. As it states here, it's a commercial site plan minor modification, and it just speaks to the minor modification, the other requirements, standards, the criteria. It's not a parking demand analysis, as was stated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, any question? Oh, sorry.
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Any closing comments by the city?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Danielle Sitzman, Neighborhood Development Services. I will just close by saying, to keep this in perspective, this is about a minor modification. This is one of 23 other types of minor modifications that the building official hears all the time. There's staff administrative review. That's the level of review that this warrants. The other types of things that are part of an administrative review are the kinds of things you would want to be an administrative review. Sign permits, temporary use permits, fence permits. These are not complicated, intense discussions. Those are the kinds of discussions that come to the Board of Adjustment or to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I would encourage you to just keep this in mind, the scope of the scale of this request, the scope of the intensity of the review of this request. You've seen the applicant provide supply and demand information to you. Taking supply and demand information and comparing it to itself, that's an analysis. If staff needed to connect the dots to come out the other side with what they were telling us, that's perfectly appropriate in this situation for us to be involved in understanding the information that they were submitting. Staff does not believe it needed an engineered multi-page study written up where basically, if you look at the examples provided by the appellant, it was just the one in Dallas was an example of where they looked up the zoning, they looked up the code book for the IT manual, and they asked the property owner his opinion. That was their 6-page report. The city sees no value in asking an applicant for a minor modification to engage an engineering firm to turn in something like that to us, when we're perfectly capable of taking the supply and demand information they give us and making and drawing conclusions from that and rendering minor mod decisions. So with that, I would just rest.
I think. Hold on. Any questions? I just have a real quick question. Is there anybody on staff that is qualified to do these, or is that just not part of the process?
Does the City of Iowa City staff have licensed civil engineers?
Yeah,
Yes, we do.
that would do what you requested from the business owner.
That would do the city could. We don't typically engage in that kind of activity, though. No, we review other firms' analysis. They provide the study and we review it. That's typically the role of staff.
Remind us again, who reviews that? You and who else?
In the case of a minor modification, it's myself and the department head.
Okay, great. And one final comment. This is my third term on the Board of Adjustment in 3 different decades. And I hate to admit that. But one of the things that I have noticed is the workload of the Board of Adjustment is dramatically reduced compared to what it was when my first term because of this minor modification process. The board used to have 4 to 5 to 6 items every week, every month. So no, it's a very important process, and I think the city staff should be commended for that. Thank you. We've done closing statements. Any questions for the appellant, city, public, anybody else from the board? If not, I will close the public hearing. And for the board to continue discussion, we need to have a motion made.
I motion to affirm this decision made by the city because it was made following administrative and procedural rules, and the decision conforms with the intent and purpose of the zoning code minimum on-site parking regulations, which are intended to ensure the public good by managing spillover problems that burden the surrounding neighborhood and protecting shared resources such as the safety and use of public infrastructure but that allow flexibility for the adaptive reuse of commercial sites with special or unique circumstances. And I would like to supplement that by saying that we have already made a decision to eliminate all.
I think I'm going to hold you.
Okay.
Let's get a second on your motion, and then you can elaborate on your motion.
Second.
There you can. Now you can, Ms. Tolman.
We've already made a decision to virtually close down all the parking on Lynn Street between Gilbert and Burlington for several months in support of walkability. And that's a multitude, that's so many more parking spaces than what we're talking about here. We're talking about 4 that disappear from this site. We're talking about maybe, a dozen on Lynn Street, and nobody's brought that up. It seems to me that the addition, also, the arguments about public safety are relevant and important, and there are lots more big discussions that we should have about parking. But this is a very small site, and I think those discussions still need to happen. But as to public safety, closing off, I agree with the gentleman who pointed out that closing off that driveway on Gilbert Street, limiting ingress and egress to Bloomington, separating the pedestrian pathway from vehicular pathways there along Gilbert Street is going to have to do nothing but improve public safety. And I just think that the staff decision was appropriate.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other comments from the board? I'll have a short comment. I'm very hesitant about this, but it's not in the context of this by itself. What I've noticed over time is that the city has certain rules, regulations, exceptions and variances are granted, and the overall intent of the ordinance or the code or the specific regulation gets sort of chipped away at in small increments, and this is a very small increment, but I can think of other instances where a change in a use from commercial to residential, for example, is not a big deal on that particular location, but it's a sort of sand shifting that bothers me about development in Iowa City, working around the larger issue in favor of smaller increments. Anyway, that's my hesitation that I brought to this particular issue. Now, I was not, what's the word I'm looking for here to be diplomatic? I was not calmed down by the staff report. But I am very impressed with the presentation by not the city so much as the owners of the business. Mr. Temple's, for example, discussion over time was very helpful, and I appreciate that very much. I'm going to support this, but once again, I'm probably the least adamant supporter you're going to have, but it's not related to you directly. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
I have a real problem with the parking demand analysis. That was one of the things that was said that it needed to be done. When I look at these things, I don't see anything that looks like a concrete parking demand analysis. When we make decisions, we are supposed to base our decisions on facts. What are the facts that have been presented before us? This has nothing to do with whether I think this project is a good one or not. What I am concerned about is when I joined the Board of Adjustment, I had to base my position on facts. What are the black and white facts that were presented before us tonight? I don't know.
No, I appreciate that. Again, my response was, I'm not comfortable saying that I think that the decision to reduce parking actually is grounded in hard facts. But I very subjectively think that this is a larger problem of parking in general. Anyway, any other comments? If not, we'll have a roll call.
Tallman,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Carlson. Yes. Russo,
Yes.
Swigert.
Yes.
Motion passes. Is this a case where if somebody wants to appeal, they can also go to court?
Yes.
Okay, fine that. Motion is declared denied in this case. I thought we denied the appeal,
The
right?
motion was approved, the appeal is denied.
The appeal is denied. Any person desiring to appeal this decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after this decision is filed with the city clerk's office. Thank you very much. Next up on the agenda is a consideration of the meeting minutes for September the 10th, 2025.
I move that we approve them.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Now he
Other
forgot.
business? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.